I was reborn on graduation morning, 6 years before I married the woman who would never love me. In my first life, I chased her so hard people called it devotion. I cooked for her, paid for her, apologized first, waited last, and smiled whenever she gave me the smallest piece of attention. Her name was Audrey Sterling. The first time I lived this day, I gave Audrey a confession necklace in front of our whole class. Everyone clapped. She smiled for the cameras. I thought that smile meant I had finally been chosen. I spent the next 6 years paying for that mistake. By the end of our marriage, I was a husband on paper and a servant in every way that mattered. Audrey had my loyalty, my money, my future, and the ugliest part was that I kept handing her more. So when I opened my eyes at 18 again and saw that same velvet box sitting on my desk, I knew exactly where my old life had started. This time, I did something my old self would have begged me to undo. I sealed the necklace in a buyback envelope, sent it away, and opened my college admissions portal. The first time, I chose Audrey's school and called it love. This time, I chose the one route she had not already claimed. And that was the moment Audrey Sterling realized her most loyal simp was about to walk out of her life. I had not magically applied to a new college that morning. I was desperate, not a wizard. I already had 2 valid offers. Aldercrest University was the route everyone expected, the polished road beside Audrey, the one where I had already placed a deposit because the boy I used to be thought staying close was the same as being chosen. Briar Coast University had accepted me into the Scent Design and Botanical Materials program, with aids still open through graduation week. The first life had taught me one useful thing before it finished grinding me into decorative dust. If a door exists, do not spend 6 years asking the wrong person for permission to use it. I did not click yet. I wanted the final transcript sent correctly, and I wanted a witness who understood school forms better than my adrenaline did. So I went to Ridgeview High School with no necklace, 2 exits on my phone, and a heart that still had the audacity to speed up when Audrey's name appeared on my screen. Her message was short. Bring the roses. Charger 2. Don't be late for the photo wall. No question mark. No please. Just the schedule of a girl who had never needed to wonder whether I would be useful. That was Audrey's gift and flaw. She rarely shouted because the world usually bent before volume became necessary. She said things like, the paperwork had already been filed. The front of Ridgeview High School looked like the entire senior class had been attacked by silver balloons. Parents crowded the entrance. Teachers pointed people toward the graduation staging area. Classmates kept yelling names like volume could make the future less terrifying. And near the senior send-off photo wall, Audrey stood beside the taped paired mark where everyone expected me to stand. She looked perfect in that polished, controlled way that had once rearranged my entire nervous system. I noticed. I hated that I noticed. Then I kept walking. Audrey held out her hand without looking away from the camera setup. Roses? I placed the white roses on the shared birthday table instead of handing them to her. They're for the table. Her eyes moved to me then. Noah. My name landed in her voice, smooth and exact, like a hand closing around the handle it owned. I took the charger from my pocket and placed it in her palm. And this is yours. She looked at the charger, then at the flowers, then back at me. Why are you acting like this today? The last version of me had spent 6 years trying to earn a room in her heart and mostly became hallway lighting. Years of silence had taught me how easy it was to disappear while standing right beside her. If I stood on that taped mark, smiled into that camera, and waited for Darius Bell to shove a microphone near my mouth, I knew exactly which road would open. I said, I'm making the day accurate. Audrey's expression tightened. Don't make it awkward. That was almost funny? Not good funny. More like finding a warning label at the bottom of a cliff after the fall. The student media editor was crouched near the tripod, trying to adjust the angle while classmates kept stepping over her cables. She was the one who had been organizing half the livestream setup since morning, quiet and efficient, with the exhausted patience of someone trusted by adults and ignored by teenagers. The taped mark beside Audrey had my name written on a little card. Not officially. Of course not. Nothing about Audrey and me was official in this life. That was the trick. Everyone just acted like my spot beside her had been assigned by gravity. I peeled the card off the floor. Audrey's hand caught my sleeve. What are you doing? I turned to the student media editor and held out the card. You need a clear angle, right? Stand here for the test shot. The editor blinked. Are you sure? Completely. Darius appeared from behind the photo wall with a wireless microphone and the expression of a man who had personally invested in other people's bad decisions. Whoa, production note, why is our romantic lead leaving his mark? Retired from the role, I said. Before the finale? Terrible pacing. I almost laughed. That was Darius. If a building was on fire, he would call it an immersive lighting choice until the smoke reached his shoes. He was warm, loyal, and at that moment, dangerously convinced he was helping. The editor stepped into the spot. The camera flashed. For one small, petty, beautiful second, Audrey stood beside the empty shape of an expectation. I did not humiliate her. I did not pull another girl close. I did not perform a new romance to punish the old one. I simply refused to occupy the place everyone had saved for me. The silence after the flash was better than applause. Audrey's voice dropped. "Noah, enough." "Not yet," I said. I left before the old habit could ask whether she needed anything else. The guidance office smelled like paper, coffee, and adults pretending the day was organized. The guidance counselor looked relieved when I shut the door behind me, probably because I was not crying, shouting, or asking if my cap made my head look tragic. "I need to update my final enrollment," I said. She glanced at the clock. Today. Darius slipped in behind me before the door could close. "For the record, I support dramatic entrances, but I do need a category. Are we talking nerves, rebellion, or full identity arc?" "Enrollment," I said. His smile thinned. "That sounds expensive. It already was." The counselor waited, and that was the first mercy of the morning. No speech, no lecture. Just a chair, a desk, and enough silence for me to prove I had not confused panic with planning. I opened the Aldercrest University portal first. The withdrawal screen looked too clean for something that had ruined an entire life once. One button, one warning about the deposit, one final confirmation. Forfeited. My thumb hovered. I pictured Audrey in the first timeline, walking ahead of me on Aldercrest paths while people treated us like a matched set. I remembered the marriage that followed, the way gratitude and love and duty had slowly fused into one ugly knot. I heard every time I had called fear loyalty because loyalty sounded less pathetic. Then I tapped confirm. The screen changed. Not enrolled. My chest hurt in a way that almost felt like air. I opened Briar Coast University's portal next and accepted the Scent Design and Botanical Materials program. Existing aid. Summer start. Campus housing available. The words were boring enough to be beautiful. The counselor leaned closer only after both confirmations were on screen. "You understand, the final transcript goes to Briar Coast now?" "Yes, and this is your decision?" "Mine." That word hit harder than it should have. Mine. Not Audrey's, not Edwin Sterling's, not the class's, not the version of me who had treated being needed like rent. Darius stopped joking. "Noah," he said, softer now, "does Audrey know? She knows I moved from the tape." "That is not the same as changing your entire college route. It is the same direction." He dragged both hands over his face. "Okay, small scheduling issue. I may have prepared a senior livestream segment." I gave him the look that question deserved. He looked at the ceiling, like the ceiling had done this. Birthday spotlight, couple nostalgia, maybe a little confession runway. A confession runway? In my defense, everyone thought you wanted it. That landed because it was true. I had wanted it. The first version of me had wanted it so badly that I'd built my whole personality around being convenient to love. But consent was not a group project, and Darius had always been too good at turning feelings into programming. "Delete it," I said. He winced. "We're already living pieces. The graduation feed is queued. I can cut the graphics, but there is still a microphone handoff after the senior messages." The old road opened again, polished and waiting. I could hide. I could let the segment disappear quietly. I could leave Audrey with confusion instead of truth and pretend avoidance was strength. But the first life had been built out of quiet little evasions. I had swallowed my own choices one at a time until there was nothing left to call a self. "Give me the microphone," I said. Darius stared. "For a non-confession? For an announcement? That is either mature or deeply terrifying. Both can be true," he nodded once. "I deserve that." The graduation staging area buzzed with the specific chaos of people who had been told to line up and immediately forgot what a line was. Teachers waved clipboards. Parents drifted near the ropes. The student media editor stood behind the camera, checking levels. Darius moved like a showman who had lost control of his own show and was trying to make that look intentional. Audrey was near the front, still holding her charger. When she saw Darius angle the microphone toward me, her face stilled. The class noticed too. That was the problem with years of predictable devotion. The moment I stepped toward a microphone on graduation day, half the room became a romance audience. Someone whistled. Someone else said, "Finally!" My stomach turned. Not because I was afraid of speaking, because for 1 second, the first timeline slid over the room like a transparent film. Same age, same stage. Same girl watching me with that unreadable composure. Same stupid hope in the crowd. I rubbed my bare ring finger once, then I stopped. Darius covered the microphone with his hand and whispered, "Last chance to not detonate my segment." "Your segment had it coming." He gave me the mic. I faced the camera first, because if I looked at Audrey too long, some loyal part of me would start bleeding in public. "I wanted to say thank you to Ridgeview High School," I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. And to Harbor House Children's Center, because I would not be standing here without people who gave me a place to grow up before I knew what to do with one. The teasing quieted. A lot of you know I was expected to attend Aldercrest University this fall. Audrey's posture changed by 1 inch. With Audrey, 1 inch was a press conference. I'm not going there, I said. This morning, I withdrew from Aldercrest and accepted Briar Coast University's Scent Design and Botanical Materials program. Silence hit first. Then Darius, because apparently his soul had a built-in applause sign, started clapping. The student media editor clapped next. A few classmates followed, then more. The room did not explode. Nobody carried me out on a chair. It was not that kind of story yet. But the applause was real, confused, and pointed at a future that did not have Audrey's name written across it. That was enough. I lowered the microphone. And before anyone asks, that was the announcement, not a confession. A laugh broke through the tension. Darius made a wounded sound beside me, like I had personally murdered his ratings. Good. Audrey did not clap. She waited until I handed the microphone back and stepped into the backstage corridor. Then she followed me, heels sharp against the floor, the charger still in her hand like evidence from a crime no one else understood. "What was that?" she asked. "My college decision." "You announced it like that?" "I announced it where everyone expected me to announce something else." Her jaw tightened. "So you wanted to embarrass me?" That was the first wound she named. Not "why are you leaving?" Not "are you okay?" The public one. I wanted to be colder than I was. I wanted to look at her and feel nothing but clean victory. Instead, Audrey looked furious in the exact way that had once reorganized my entire week, and my traitor heart still noticed the shine in her eyes before my brain could file a complaint. I hated that too. "I didn't embarrass you," I said. "I stopped lying." "You stood beside me every year," she said. "You handled every birthday setup. You already committed to Aldercrest. My grandfather has supported you for years, and now you decide this in front of everyone?" The hallway narrowed. "Not physically. Shame just has good architecture." Edwin Sterling had helped me. That was true. Sterling House had given me a separate room, school stability, a polished address, and 1,000 small advantages I had never been allowed to forget for long. Gratitude had been the first chain because it looked the most like decency. I made myself breathe before I answered. "Edwin helped me when I needed help," I said. "That does not make my life a family asset." Audrey's eyes flashed. "No one said that. You did not have to. Everyone acted it out." She took a step closer. "If this is because I did not react the way you wanted this morning?" "This morning?" I laughed once, and it came out ugly enough that I stopped. "Audrey, I have spent years being the person who remembered what you liked, where you stood when your phone died, what flowers looked best in your photos, and which future would make your grandfather proud. I made myself useful until usefulness became my entire personality." Her expression shifted, but I could not read her mind, and I was done writing generous translations for silence. "I am not punishing you," I said. "I am leaving the orbit." All day, I had seen anger. Now uncertainty slipped through. Then her posture hardened, and whatever honest thing might have been there disappeared. "You cannot build a life in 10 days just because a camera applauded." "No," I said. "I build it by making the next choice." My phone buzzed. The buyback confirmation opened across the screen. The necklace had passed the first review. A partial refund would be released after final inspection. It was not cinematic money. It was not enough for a transformation montage. It was a few practical steps and one very satisfying receipt. I showed her only the top line. "The necklace is gone." Audrey stared at the screen. If she had expected pain, she got it. I felt it too. The gift had been beautiful. I had been stupid when I bought it, but I had also been sincere, and I did not enjoy burying that version of myself. I just refused to be buried with him. Darius appeared at the end of the corridor, finally silent for once. The student media editor stood a few feet behind him with her camera lowered. "Sorry," she said softly. "I wasn't trying to listen." "Nobody in this hallway is currently succeeding at privacy," Darius muttered. Audrey looked at the editor, and I felt the old route trying to write a new scene. Jealousy, misunderstanding, me using someone's feelings like a weapon, easy drama, cheap damage. I stepped slightly away from the editor before Audrey could turn her into the point. The editor swallowed. "I just wanted to say congratulations, and I think it was brave." "Thank you," I said. She held the camera strap with both hands. "Also, since this is apparently the day for saying things before people leave, I liked you for 2 years. You don't have to do anything with that. I just wanted you to know someone saw you." The sentence hit a place in me that Audrey's attention had never reached cleanly. Not because I loved the editor. I did not. That would have been unfair to both of us, and I was trying very hard to stop turning other people into proof. But for 6 years in my head, I had let Audrey's distance grade my entire worth. One quiet girl with a camera had just handed back a point the universe had deducted without authority. "I am honored," I said, "because jokes would have been cowardice there, and I am not in a place where I can turn that into anything honest." She nodded like she had expected that. "I know. I just hated watching everyone act like you were furniture," Darius whispered. "Emotional support furniture? Retired," I said. The editor smiled a little and backed away, giving me exactly what almost no one had given me that morning. "Room." Darius came closer after she left. His voice had lost the stage glitter. "Are you moving too fast?" I had spent years moving too slow. He heard enough of the weight to stop pushing. I opened the message from the trial shift I had requested before leaving Sterling House. They had an opening the next morning. Short shift, temporary schedule. Enough to start building money that did not come from a family ledger. I accepted it. Then I bought the one-way travel for Briar Coast's summer move-in date. 10 days. The number looked impossible and clean. Audrey watched my thumb move across the screen. "You're really doing this?" "Yes. Where will you even stay until then?" "Sterling House," I said. "In the guest suite. I will be polite, I will not make a scene, and in 10 days, I leave." Her mouth pressed into a thin line. "You think practical problems won't change your mind?" That was the final hook in her voice. Not love, not apology, practicality, the old machine trying to restart. I put my phone in my pocket before she could make the confirmations feel like items up for review. "They might make it harder," I said. "They do not get a vote." Darius exhaled like he had been holding his breath for the entire hallway. Audrey looked past me toward the noise of graduation, where our classmates were still laughing, clapping, posing, and pretending one speech had not cracked the script open. When she looked back, I could not know her plan, but I knew that look. She was not done pushing. I did not know what she would do next. I did not know how much Sterling House could still pull at me before I walked out for good. I only knew that the necklace was gone, Aldercrest was gone, and the future had a departure date. That morning, the old life stopped chasing me. It was behind me, 10 days from losing its address. By breakfast the next morning, I had a first shift, one house key on my ring, and Audrey Sterling standing at my counter like I had missed a staff meeting. The counter belonged to Juniper Cup, not her, which was the first beautiful little detail. There were paper cups stacked by my elbow, a tip jar with $3 and a button in it, and a manager who cared exactly 0% about the emotional collapse of Ridgeview High School's favorite almost couple. I cared a little more than 0%. I was human, unfortunately. The Juniper Cup manager handed me an apron, pointed at the register and said, "Smile if you can, be accurate if you cannot." "I can do accurate," I said. "Good, accuracy causes fewer refunds." That was the first workplace philosophy I had heard in years that did not involve gratitude, destiny, or Audrey's calendar. It was almost spiritual. The student media editor was already there, tying her own apron behind the counter. In graduation lighting, she had looked like a quiet camera ghost. Under the ugly cafe fluorescence, she looked like someone who had slept 4 hours and still knew where every clean towel lived. When she saw me, her smile was small and careful. "You actually came," she said. "I enjoy proving people wrong before noon." "Audrey?" "Mostly myself." She nodded like she understood too much and made room for me by the register. That was the entire conversation. We left yesterday's confession, adjacent emotional grenade, exactly where it belonged, and got paid to ask strangers what size drink they wanted. Healthy progress sometimes wore an apron. The first hour was not glamorous. I spilled steamed milk on my sleeve, forgot which lid fit which cup, and learned that people became philosophers when asked whether they wanted one pump or two. But tips went into the jar. My name went on the timesheet. The money was small and it belonged to me without a family ledger whispering, "Remember who gave this to you." Honest labor had one underrated feature. When the shift ended, the job stopped pretending it loved you. Darius Bell arrived near lunch with sunglasses on his head and the cautious expression of a man approaching a stage after the lighting rig had fallen. "I am here as a customer," he announced, a respectful, non-matchmaking customer. The student media editor looked at him. "Do you want coffee?" "I want absolution, but I will start with coffee." "Size?" I asked. Darius pressed a hand to his chest. "Look at you. Boundaries and retail voice. Character development with a name tag. Medium or large?" "Medium. I am emotionally large already." I made his drink badly enough that he took one sip and stared into the cup like it had revealed a minor personal betrayal. He still put $2 in the tip jar. That was friendship. Questionable taste, but friendship. Then the door opened again. Audrey Sterling entered Juniper Cup in a cream blouse, polished shoes, and the kind of stillness that made ordinary rooms feel like they had accidentally become interview panels. She should not have looked out of place. Rich people bought coffee too. But Audrey did not enter like a customer. She entered like she had finally located an employee who had wandered out of the estate. My body reacted before my dignity could file a report, shoulders straight, breath controlled, bare ring finger rubbing once against my thumb under the counter. Then, I stopped. "Good afternoon," I said, with the same voice I had used for a woman who had argued with me about foam. "What can I get started for you?" Audrey looked at the menu for half a second, then back at me. The usual, 2 words, 6 years of marriage in miniature. The whole old arrangement had lived inside phrases like that. The usual meant I remembered. The usual meant she did not have to ask. The usual meant my attention was not a gift, it was infrastructure. I kept my hand on the register. What size and sweetness? Her expression did not change much. Audrey had been raised around money, boardrooms, and people pretending discomfort was a scheduling issue. But I saw the pause. "You know it," she said. "I know a lot of things." "Then make it." The line behind her shifted. The student media editor stopped wiping the counter. Darius became so still I almost checked him for a pulse. I smiled politely. It felt illegal. I can make a drink from memory, or I can take an order from a customer. Today, I am doing the second one. Audrey's gaze sharpened. "This is unnecessary." "Size and sweetness." She folded her arms. "Noah, I can give you a minute." She did not answer, so I looked past her to the man behind her. "I can help whoever is ready." The tiny gasp from somewhere near the pastry case fed a petty part of me. I am not proud of. I am also not ashamed enough to pretend it did not happen. History has survived on smaller acts of rebellion than making a wealthy girl say her own coffee order out loud. The next customer stepped around Audrey with the terror of someone walking through a museum alarm beam. I took his order, I made it accurately, I handed it over, he tipped $1 like he was paying hazard insurance. Audrey's mouth pressed into a lime. My coworker stepped closer, soft voice steady. "I can take your order if you want." Audrey looked at her apron, then at her face, and recognition arrived with teeth. My coworker had done nothing wrong. Audrey had seen her by the photo wall, behind the camera, saying one honest thing without asking to own me afterward. "Of course," Audrey said, "the new routine." The air changed, humor stopped. My coworker lowered her eyes for half a second, then lifted them again. "I just work here." "Apparently that is the appeal now," Audrey said. It was not shouted. That made it worse. Audrey's cruelty when it came often wore gloves. The sentence slid across the counter, polished enough for public use and sharp enough to cut only the person it was aimed at. My shame flared first. A dirty little reflex that still believed service work was evidence against me if the right person sneered at it. Then anger arrived, cleaner and more useful. I took the cup Audrey had not ordered, opened the register, and pressed the refund key for the small bottled water she had grabbed from the display without looking. "You are refunded," I said. Audrey blinked. "What? You are leaving?" The manager looked over from the espresso machine. My coworker went very still. Darius whispered, "Oh, the season premiere has arrived," then immediately looked like he regretted having a mouth. Audrey's voice dropped. "You are throwing me out? I am asking a customer to leave after she insulted another worker." "Another worker," she repeated, like the words tasted foreign. "Yes." Her eyes stayed on mine. "You made this personal. You did. I made it boring enough to enforce." That was the thing about a clean boundary. It did not need a violin section. It needed a door. Audrey looked at my coworker again. For 1 second, the old route tried to open. I could have used the moment. I could have stepped cooler to my coworker, played wounded and adored, made Audrey bleed jealousy in public. Easy damage. Cheap applause. I did not. "She is not my rebound," I said. "She is my coworker. She deserves basic respect even if you are angry at me." My coworker exhaled quietly. Darius stopped performing completely. Audrey's face changed, but not enough for me to translate. I had retired from making generous subtitles for silence. The manager dried her hands on a towel and came to stand beside me. "We can serve you another day," she said. "Not today." That helped more than I expected. For once, an adult in the room looked past Audrey's last name and remembered the door existed. Audrey picked up her bag. At the exit, she looked back at me. "You enjoy this?" I wanted to say yes. Some ugly part of me enjoyed that the universe had finally placed a counter between us and let me stand on the side with terms. Instead, I said the truer thing. "I enjoy not pretending." She left. The cafe released a breath it had been holding. Darius leaned on the pickup counter and pointed at me with his coffee cup. "For the record," he said, "your customer service era is terrifying." "You ordered a medium betrayal," I said. "Drink it." My coworker laughed once, small and startled. Then she touched the edge of the counter, not me. "Thank you. You should not have needed me." Still, that was enough. The point was not to become her hero. The point was to stop letting Audrey's discomfort draft innocent people into our disaster. After my shift, I checked the tip jar, my timesheet, and the buyback update on my phone. The necklace refund had cleared final inspection. The amount was ordinary, practical, and exactly enough to make the next step less fragile. Then Edwin Sterling called. I stood outside Juniper Cup with my apron folded under one arm and watched Audrey's name not appear on the screen. Edwin's did. That mattered. The boy I used to be would have answered like he had been called to the principal's office by a family that technically was not his family and socially still somehow had a basement full of authority. I answered like an adult, shaky, but adult. Noah, Edwin said. His voice was measured, complete, and impossible to rush. Audrey told me you changed your enrollment. I did, and accepted Briar Coast University. Yes. Were both offers valid when you made the decision? That question surprised me because it was fair. Yes, I said. Aldercrest was deposited. Briar Coast's scent design and botanical materials program still had aid and summer housing open. I withdrew from Aldercrest myself, accepted Briar Coast myself, and the guidance counselor only confirmed the transcript destination. And the travel? Booked. With the household account? No. There was a pause. Traffic moved past the sidewalk. Darius hovered inside the window, pretending not to hover with the subtlety of a marching band. Edwin said, I had expected you to remain close to Audrey. The sentence was not cruel. That was what made it heavy. I know. I did not say it plainly. I should have. Unspoken expectations are still pressure when everyone acts on them. My throat tightened before I could stop it. He continued. Your placement at Sterling House was a host arrangement coordinated after Harbor House. It was support, not adoption, employment, engagement, or a claim on your adulthood. I closed my eyes. There were no fireworks, only a sidewalk, a folded apron, and a 72-year-old man finally naming the door that had always technically been unlocked. Thank you, I said. I am going to send that in writing. You do not have to. I do, Edwin said. Because I allowed help to become a fog, and fog benefits the house more than the young person trying to leave it. That sounded like Edwin. Institutional guilt with a tie on. I will not fund your move unless you ask, he said. I will not ask you to stay. I will ask that you leave safely and tell the house staff what access you are returning. I can do that. And Noah? Yes. Gratitude is not a tenancy agreement for your future. I looked down at my bare hand. For once, my ring finger stayed still. The signed letter arrived in my email 15 minutes later. It was short, clear, and almost painfully formal. I owed no service, romance, or future residence. The host arrangement had ended with my graduation, and any continued stay before travel was temporary guest accommodation only. I read it twice. Then I sent Edwin one line back. Thank you for putting the door where I can see it. I did not know if he understood the whole sentence. He did not need to. That evening, I returned to Sterling House with my wages in my account, the necklace refund pending transfer, and the strangest feeling in my chest. Freedom was too big a word for a person still carrying a house key, but the key had become an object instead of a leash. Audrey was in the front hall when I came in. Of course she was. She had changed clothes, but not posture. Still polished, still controlled, still the girl my first life had chased so hard that I mistook proximity for proof. My grandfather called you, she said. He did. You asked him for a letter? He offered one. Her eyes moved to my folded apron. And the job? Also real. You cannot seriously prefer being ordered around by strangers. I almost smiled. Audrey, your argument has a mirror problem. Her face tightened. I walked to the entry table. The house key came off my ring with a small metallic scrape. The household account card followed. That card had paid for groceries, school fees, clothes for formal dinners I never wanted to attend, and 1,000 little expenses that had trained me to feel borrowed. I set both objects on the table. Audrey stared at them. What are you doing? Returning access. You are still staying here until you leave. In the guest suite, as a temporary guest, I will not use the account, I will not use the car service, I will not let the house absorb the inconvenience of my decision and then pretend the decision was not mine. This is dramatic. No, I said. The microphone was dramatic. This is inventory. That one was petty. I stand by it. I went upstairs and packed only what belonged to me. Clothes I had chosen, notebooks, a few small objects from Harbor House, the cedar toy I had kept longer than any grown man should admit without a cross-examination. I left behind anything purchased for family events that had never felt like mine. Audrey followed me to the guest suite doorway but did not enter. That mattered. It fixed nothing, and I still noticed. Everything you have came through this house, she said. The sentence hit exactly where she aimed it. The room, the school, the polished address, the quiet safety after years of group bedrooms and donated coats. She was not inventing the history. She was weaponizing the receipt. I folded a shirt slowly because if my hands stayed busy, my voice might stay steady. A lot came through this house, I said. Help did, stability did, opportunities did. Then why are you acting like we trapped you? I faced her. Because nobody had to lock the door if I believed leaving made me ungrateful. She went still. I picked up my travel envelope, slid Edwin's release letter inside, and zipped the bag. Gratitude does not make me an employee, I said. It does not make me a dependent forever. And it definitely does not make me your future husband. The last words changed the room. Audrey had no reason to know about the marriage in my head, the silent dinners, the missed calls, or the cold bedrooms behind that sentence. To her, it probably sounded like an accusation against a future she had not named. To me, it was a line across a grave. Noah, she said, quieter. I waited. For 1 second, I hoped she might say something personal instead of handing me another polished list of Edwin, the house, rankings, schedules, and optics. Then she said, Briar Coast is far. I nodded. That is one of its stronger features. Her mouth closed. I did not fill the silence for her. The remaining days became a countdown instead of a debate. I worked the short shifts the manager offered. I kept the student media editor as my coworker, not my emotional insurance policy. She asked about Briar Coast once, wished me luck, and did not try to make my leaving about her. That kind of restraint should not have felt rare, but my standards had recently crawled out from underground. Darius came by twice under the banner of anti-ambush friendship. The first time, he brought coffee from the place where I worked, which I told him was either loyalty or evidence of a medical condition. The second time, he apologized without jokes for building a confession segment around a yes I had never given him. I thought I was helping, he said. I know, that is not a defense. No, I said, it is just why I am not throwing your whole personality into traffic. He accepted that with the solemn dignity of a man spared from metaphorical vehicular consequences. The money stacked slowly. Wages, tips, necklace refund. I was nowhere near rich, but I could buy what I needed without the household account card pulsing in my pocket like a tiny guilty heart. I confirmed campus housing. I confirmed the travel. I sent the final arrival time to Briar Coast. I scheduled Harbor House as my last stop before the shuttle out of Fairmont. Audrey stopped issuing direct commands after the key return. That did not mean she stopped applying pressure. She appeared in doorways when I carried boxes. She asked whether I had checked the weather in Port Lark. She mentioned Aldercrest's rankings as if a list could hold my hand at night. She offered to have someone handle my luggage, then looked away when I said I had 2 arms and a ticket. Every offer sounded almost reasonable. That was the danger. Audrey had always been best at making ownership look like efficiency. On my last night at Sterling House, I stood in the guest suite with my bags by the door and the key absent from my pocket. The room looked less like a home than it ever had, which was painful and honest. Downstairs, Audrey was quiet. Edwin's letter sat in my travel envelope. My phone showed the route, the time, the housing confirmation, and the address of the place that had raised me before Audrey's family ever knew my name. One day remained. No Sterling resource was necessary. That should have made me feel invincible. Instead, it made me feel exposed. When every borrowed thing fell away, I had to discover whether there was a person underneath all that usefulness or just an empty hangar where Audrey's schedule used to be. So I set my alarm for Harbor House Children's Center. If Sterling House had been the place I was allowed to stay, Harbor House was the first place that had taught me how to leave a room and still be wanted back. I went back to Harbor House to say goodbye, and a terrified 10-year-old accidentally showed my future mentor what I was good at. That sentence sounds too neat now, like life had arranged a professional demonstration with emotional lighting. At the time, I was just an 18-year-old with 2 bags, a paid-for ticket, and enough panic in my chest to make every hallway look like a test. Harbor House Children's Center sat in Fairmont with the same practical stubbornness I remembered. Nothing about it was glamorous. The paint near the side entrance had been touched up in a shade that almost matched. The donation shelves were labeled with tape. The office printer made a noise like it was personally offended by paper. I loved it more than some people loved mansions. The Harbor House director met me at the front with one hand on her hip and the other already pointed toward the supply table. If you brought a grand gesture, she said, turn around and return it. Good morning to you too. Good morning. Show me the damage. I lifted the bags. Only what you requested. She opened one and checked like a customs officer for martyrdom. Cotton squares, unscented soap, plain notebooks, markers, spare charging cords, and a few grocery cards in the amount she had approved. I had paid from wages and the necklace refund, kept Sterling House out of it, and resisted the old urge to donate myself down to decorative lint. The director narrowed her eyes. You kept enough for the move? Yes. Enough means food too, Noah. Yes, and laundry. Do I look like I fear laundry? You look like you would skip meals to buy a child better, socks, and then call it budgeting. That was unfair only because it was accurate. I held up both hands. I kept enough. She studied me for another second, then accepted the bags. Good. Care that leaves you empty just makes another person clean up after you later. I had no joke ready for that, which was how I knew she had landed a clean hit. The center was busy and the uneven way care places were always busy. A teenage volunteer carried snack boxes down the hall. A child argued with a cabinet door. Someone laughed in the common room, then someone else immediately shouted that the laughter was too loud. The place had never been quiet, but it had rules I understood. If a door closed, you knocked. If a child said no to a hug, you believed them. If someone donated something, the center decided whether it helped. Choice lived there before I had language for it. I put my bags in the director's office because my scheduled Briar Coast welcome call started in 15 minutes. I had almost canceled it. There is a special kind of fear that arrives when an escape becomes real enough to judge you back. Running from Audrey was one thing, joining a program full of people who actually knew what they were doing was another. The director saw me staring at the laptop like it might bite. "You wanted this program," she said. "Wanting something and letting experts notice me wanting it are different recreational sports. Sit down. Warm authority, plain, useful, and shaped like a chair." I sat. The welcome call opened with a small grid of admitted students and one woman whose face could have made a room stand straighter through a screen. Dr. Kessler looked practical, which was worse than theatrical. Theatrical people could be flattered. Practical people asked where the fire exit was and whether your idea had a purpose. "Each of you will choose one sensory memory that shaped the way you solve problems," she said. "Not your favorite smell, not the most expensive one, a useful one." That was the whole introduction. Dr. Kessler had apparently looked at higher education and decided sparkle was a contaminant. I respected her immediately and feared her like a tax audit. When my turn came, I took a worn cedar toy from my bag. It was small enough to fit in my palm, rubbed smooth at the edges, with one corner darkened from years of hands. Harbor House had kept a bin of objects like that for kids who needed something familiar when rooms changed too fast. "This was from here," I said, holding it up to the camera. "Cedar mostly. A little dust no one will admit to. It helped because it was not exciting, it was stable. If a room was loud or new, a kid could choose this and know at least one thing would behave." Dr. Kessler leaned slightly closer. "Choice matters more to you than novelty." "Usually," I said, "novelty is what adults call a surprise after they have already signed the form." One corner of her mouth moved. "Barely. I counted it as a national event." Then the hallway outside the office erupted. Too many adult voices hit at once, a burst of laughter from donors arriving for a pickup, the papery scrape of gift bags, and a wave of heavy perfume that rolled under the office door like someone had weaponized a department store. A child's voice cut through it. "Stop! Stop!" Every part of me narrowed. The director was already moving, but she had another child at her elbow and a volunteer asking where to put boxes. Through the office window, I saw a 10-year-old resident pressed near the hallway wall, hands over their ears, breath too fast, eyes fixed on the scented gift bags stacked on a bench while adults kept talking above them. Dr. Kessler said from the laptop, "Noah?" "I need a minute," I said. I did not ask permission from the screen. I did not finish my evaluation. I left the cedar toy on the desk, then grabbed it again because some instincts are better than plans. In the hallway, 3 adults were trying to help by saying the child's name, which would have been more useful if any of them had lowered their volume. The director caught my eye. I had no formal authority there, only a graduate's ticket, a familiar room, and the memory of what too much noise could do. But I knew that particular look on a child's face from rooms where too much happened too fast and everyone expected gratitude for the chaos. "Can I clear the bench?" I asked the director. "Do it," she said. That was enough. I moved the scented gift bags into the side storage room and shut the door. I opened the hallway window 3 inches. The rescue was air, which sounded pathetic until you had been trapped in a room without enough of it. The teenage volunteer started apologizing at full speed, so I held up one hand. "Quiet first," I said. The adults finally stopped talking. I crouched several feet from the child, not blocking the exit, not reaching. My heart was hammering, but my voice came out steady. "You do not have to answer," I said. "I am putting 3 things on the floor. You can choose one, or none." I set down a clean cotton square, an orange peel from the snack bowl. The cedar toy? Clean, bright, familiar. The child did not move at first. Their breathing still came too fast. Their eyes jumped from the storage door to the window to me. I slid the cotton a little farther away from myself. "No wrong choice," I said. The child reached for the cedar. I looked away slightly, giving them privacy with the choice. That mattered. People loved to stare at someone calming down as if recovery was a performance and they had front-row seats. The child pressed the cedar toy between both palms, one breath, another, shoulders lowering by degrees. The director guided the adult back. The volunteer stopped apologizing and started moving the rest of the bags without being asked, which was growth in real time and better than half the speeches adults gave each other. When the child could speak, they whispered, "This one is old. Old things know how to mind their business," I said. The child's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Enough." The director touched my shoulder once, then pointed back toward the office. "Your call is still open." My stomach dropped. I returned to the laptop expecting a polite dismissal, a note about professionalism, maybe the academic version of "We regret to inform you." Instead, Dr. Kessler was watching me with an expression I could not read and did not dare decorate. "Explain every choice," she said. She gave me a command sharp enough to respect me, so I explained. I moved the heavy fragrance first because it was the pressure that could be changed fastest. I opened the window because telling someone to calm down while leaving the room, the same is just theater. I gave 3 options because too many choices become another demand. Cotton was neutral. Orange was bright but familiar from food. Cedar was stable because the center uses objects like that. I did not hand it over because contact would make me part of the problem. Dr. Kessler did not interrupt. That made me more nervous than interruption would have. "And why did you stop your own evaluation?" she asked. The honest answer came out before the impressive one could put on shoes. "Because a child mattered more than me looking prepared." The director, who had stayed by the door, made a quiet sound that was not quite approval and not quite grief. Dr. Kessler looked down, wrote something, then looked back at me. "You are untrained, painfully aware. You are also not accidental." I did not know what to do with that sentence. Praise from Audrey had always felt like sunlight through glass, warm, distant, and impossible to touch. This was different. This was a professional looking at my choices and naming them real. "Use the safe materials in that office," Dr. Kessler said. "Make me a rough card for a door opening after rain. No performance. 2 minutes." My pulse turned stupid. The director pointed at a tray near the filing cabinet. "Paper strips, cotton, orange, cedar pencil shavings from the craft bin, water in the cup. Nothing fancy." I was not going to do fancy. "You were absolutely going to make suffering look tasteful. Do simple." I did simple. I dampened a paper strip near the open window, not enough to soak it, just enough to catch the mineral flatness of rain on old concrete. I touched cotton to the edge so the first impression would feel clean instead of empty. I crushed one tiny piece of orange peel against the paper, then added cedar pencil shavings in the center, warm and dry, like stepping into a room that had been waiting without demanding applause. Door opening after rain. When I held it near the laptop, I knew what I had made. It was rough, simple, and still mine, a choice. Outside to inside. Noise to control, a way to enter without being grabbed. Dr. Kessler asked, "What is it for?" "For someone who wants to come inside but needs proof the room will let them leave again." The sentence left me quieter than I expected. Dr. Kessler studied me for a long second. "When you arrive in Port Lark, report to Kessler Sensory Lab after the standard safety training. I have a paid summer fellowship open under supervision. Conditional. You will learn procedure before touching anything that matters." My brain heard paid and fellowship and supervision and immediately tried to reject all 3 to remain emotionally consistent. "You have not met me in person," I said. "I watched you abandon an evaluation for the right reason, reduce variables without making yourself the hero, and describe design as consent. That is enough to begin. It is not enough to skip training." I swallowed. The director looked at me like she was daring me to make this smaller. "Thank you," I said. "Plain, no joke, no costume." "Good," Dr. Kessler said. "Do not thank me by becoming dramatic. Arrive on time." The call ended 5 minutes later. I sat there staring at the blank screen while my future rearranged itself from escape route to invitation. The director took the chair across from me. "Paid? Yes. Supervised? Very. Good. You need both." That sounded almost supportive. It was supportive. I just refused to make it sugary. "We have enough donated frosting in this building to seal a driveway." I laughed, and since graduation morning, that was the first laugh that did not feel like air escaping a wound. Then Audrey arrived. She came through the front entrance with a staff member beside her and stopped when she saw me in the office doorway. Her gaze moved to my bags, the laptop, the director, and the cedar toy still on the desk. She took in details the way she always did, fast and controlled, but details were not the same as understanding. "I heard this was your last stop," she said. "It is." Her eyes shifted to the director. "I would like to make a donation." The director's polite face appeared. I had seen that face calm donors, inspectors, and children with scissors. It was powerful and terrifying. "Harbor House accepts donations through the office," the director said, "with terms reviewed here." Audrey nodded. "A large one. In Noah's name. Help with a handle attached." My old reflex tried to soften it. She was trying, maybe. She had come to the center. She had not ordered me to cancel the ticket. She had chosen money, because money was the language her family trusted when feelings refused to stand still. But if I let my name become the ribbon on her donation, every future headline could tie my move back to sterling generosity before I even reached Port Lark. No, I said. Audrey's eyes found mine. No, if you want to donate, donate directly through the director. The gift cannot use my name, buy access, carry conditions, or make me your project. Her posture tightened. I am trying to help. Then let it help without owning the story. The director did not smile, but satisfaction flickered near her eyes. Those are workable terms. Audrey held my gaze. You think everything from me is ownership? No, I said. I think you reach for ownership when you do not know how to say what you want. The sentence landed too hard for the office. Audrey looked toward the hallway, where the 10-year-old resident sat on the floor with a cedar toy in a cotton square, calm now, watched from a respectful distance by the volunteer. Audrey's expression shifted again, and again I refused to turn it into a story I could not prove. Can we talk outside? She asked. I looked at the director. She lifted one eyebrow. Your shuttle is not for 2 hours. Talk if you choose, leave if you choose. Revolutionary concept. So I went outside with Audrey. The air smelled like rain on hot pavement and the faint orange still on my fingers. For a second, the rough scent card sat in my memory like a prophecy I had not earned yet. Door opening after rain. Enter if you choose, leave if you need. Audrey stood near the steps, hands clasped once, then released. My grandfather thinks you should have more support during the move. I waited. The house has contacts, she said. Aldercrest still has better rankings. Port Lark is across the country. The program is small. If the novelty wears off, you will have made everything harder for yourself. Every sentence was polished. Every sentence was practical. Every sentence was practical. Every sentence built a bridge over the one thing I had asked for without touching it. Audrey, she stopped. What do you want? Her eyes met mine. The humor left. Good. Some moments deserve silence without decoration. I want you to be reasonable, she said. That is a strategy. What do you want? Her jaw flexed. I want you safe. That is a condition. What do you want? For one dangerous second, I wanted to help her. I wanted to hand her the words like I had handed her chargers, flowers, notes, explanations, exits. I wanted to do the old work for her because my heart still had muscle memory and terrible politics. I did not. Audrey looked away first. I want this to stop feeling like punishment. Honest, maybe? Still not enough. I am not doing this to punish you, I said. I am doing it because staying would punish me. You will come back, she said, quieter, when the novelty wears off. That hurt more than it should have because she still needed my future to be a phase in order for her past to make sense. Maybe I fail, I said. Her eyes snapped back. I mean it, I said. Maybe I get there and I am ordinary. Maybe Dr. Kessler realizes the live call was one good moment and nothing more. Maybe I miss Fairmont so badly I hate every mile. But if I fail, the failure will finally belong to me. Audrey did not answer. That was the answer. I went back inside, hugged the director because she allowed it, and said goodbye to the center without making a speech. Speeches were dangerous around Harbor House. Someone always needed a snack halfway through, and honestly, that was democracy. The 10-year-old resident gave the cedar toy back before I left. You can keep it, I said. They shook their head. It is old, it knows this place. I closed my fingers around it. There was no camera waiting for that moment, only a child returning an object to the person leaving, as if the place trusted me to carry one small piece without making it a chain. Departure morning arrived with Darius at the shuttle stop, holding a travel pillow so ugly it looked like a neck brace designed by someone with a grudge. For posture, he said. For lawsuits, for symbolism, you are leaving the past with cervical support. Never say that again. He handed it over anyway. Then his face went serious, which on Darius always looked like a curtain dropping after the wrong act. No more romantic ambushes, he said. I swear. No segments, no surprise microphones, no for your own good staging. Thank you. Also, if you become famous and need an event producer, remember I am learning boundaries at a competitive pace. Your resume is chaos and one apology. A growing field. Audrey arrived before the shuttle boarded. I had known she might. I had told myself I was ready. My body, a historically unreliable committee, disagreed. She stood a few feet away from me, not close enough to claim, not far enough to pretend coincidence. You have everything? She asked. Enough, Noah. I met her eyes. The old life hovered between us as a habit. I waited for her real feeling. She offered the safest sentence adjacent to it. Both of us stood outside a vehicle that had a schedule and therefore more emotional clarity than our entire history. When it stops feeling new, she said, call before you make it worse. Darius's mouth opened. I glanced at him. He closed it. Growth, miracles everywhere. I turned back to Audrey. If I call, it will not be because I need permission to come home. Then why? Because I choose to. The driver called boarding. I picked up my bags. Audrey's hand moved like she might reach for one, then stopped. That restraint was not repair, but it was restraint, and after the week we had survived, I noticed the difference. I boarded the shuttle with Darius waving the ugly pillow like a tragic flag, and Audrey standing in the same morning light where I had once mistaken being watched for being wanted. I looked away because the road finally needed my attention. When the shuttle pulled out of Fairmont, I rubbed the cedar toy once, not my ring finger. Small change, huge to me. By the time I reached Port Lark, Oregon, the sky had turned the color of wet paper, and my phone had 3 messages from Briar Coast University, one from Darius rating the travel pillow, emotionally historic, and one notification from Uniloop. I opened the campus message first because I was trying to become the kind of person who did not feed every bad feeling immediately. Then, the Uniloop preview expanded on my lock screen anyway. It showed my graduation photo, a cropped image of Sterling House, and a caption calling me Audrey Sterling's discarded charity case. I had not received my room key yet. Someone had already tried to write my new name for me. My new college welcomed me with a dorm key, a lab badge, and a viral post calling me Audrey Sterling's discarded charity case. I had imagined Port Lark would feel like distance. Instead, my first campus line came with strangers glancing at my phone, then at my face, then away with the guilty speed of people who had already read the headline and wanted credit for pretending they had not. The Uniloop post used my graduation photo, a cropped image of Sterling House, and a caption built to bruise the exact place I was trying to heal. Audrey Sterling's charity case runs west after public breakup. Briar Coast gets a pity transfer. It was short, ugly, and efficient. Honestly, if humiliation paid rent, that caption would have covered a studio apartment. I saved the post before anger could make me stupid. That was the first rule I learned in Port Lark. When someone tried to write my story in public, I did not throw my phone into the nearest decorative planter. Archive first, spiral later. Orientation staff handed me my room key and pointed me toward the summer program. Check-in. One student in line whispered, Sterling House, like it was a diagnosis. Another looked at my lab badge and asked if I was the guy from the heiress video. I said I was the guy trying to find the safety training room, which was true and much harder to turn into content. Every step across campus felt like dragging Fairmont behind me by a chain. I had left the house, the key, the account card, the paired photo mark, and the girl whose silence had once... Do you need 5 minutes, she asked, or do you need work? That was Dr. Kessler's version of emotional support. It came with no music, no hand on the shoulder, and a strong implication that feelings should file a schedule request. Work, I said. Good answer, bad posture. Put the phone away. I obeyed because she was right, and because I had already spent one lifetime giving Audrey the power to decide whether I belonged in a room. I was not about to hand that power to anonymous Uniloop commentators who thought context was seasoning. The orientation room smelled like clean paper, citrus wipes, new plastic badges, and the dry anxiety of students pretending they were relaxed. A long table held sealed beginner trays. A small group of admitted students stood near the front while orientation staff adjusted a camera for a student media welcome feature. That was where Grant Rourke entered my life. He did not storm in. People like Grant did not need storming. He arrived with polished shoes, a clipped microphone, and the easy smile of a man who had never been forced. Noah Voss, he said, like my name had been placed on his cue card for flavor. Welcome to Briar Coast. I did not know him yet. I knew the type. Expensive calm, perfect angle, a smile with a receipt printer tucked behind it. Thanks, I said. Grant Rourke. He offered his hand. I'm hosting a quick feature on the summer cohort. Your arrival has been getting attention. That sounds like a medical warning. His smile sharpened by 1 polite degree. Only if attention makes you nervous. Bad questions make me nervous. Dr. Kessler, who had stepped close enough to hear that, said, Then ask good ones. Grant's eyes flicked to her, then back to me. Of course. Noah, students online are asking whether Audrey Sterling helped arrange your fellowship after the graduation situation. Did Briar Coast reach out because of your work, or because of the Sterling name? Clip-ready cruelty, wearing a welcome badge. The camera light stayed on. The other students went still in the way people do when a room offers them a free disaster. My shame rose first. It always did when someone said Sterling and help in the same breath. Shame was reliable like a bad appliance. Then I remembered the Harbor House hallway, the child choosing cedar, Dr. Kessler asking me to explain every choice. I remembered the signed release in my travel envelope and the house key sitting on a... Dr. Kessler offered the fellowship after a live evaluation she recorded, I said. Audrey was not on that call. Edwin Sterling did not fund it. If you want to discuss the program, I can do that. If you want to discuss Audrey, you need a different guest. Grant tilted his head. You speak about her very carefully. I learned care late. Dr. Kessler made a sound that might have been approval if it had passed through a severe academic filter. Grant smiled wider. Then let's discuss the program. The prompt for the feature is simple. Each new student builds a first impression from the sealed tray, a place you choose to enter. The prompt hit a nerve, which I suspected was the point. Doorways had been stalking me since graduation morning. Sterling House doors, Harbor House doors, shuttle doors, campus doors. Apparently my emotional life had become architecture with fees. I looked at Dr. Kessler. She nodded once. Beginner materials only. Check your tray before use. That instruction saved me. The tray in front of me looked normal at first glance. Clear film, printed beginner label, paper strips inside. Then the corner near the seal lifted slightly, and a sharp, peppery bite leaked through the edge. It did not belong with cotton, cedar, citrus, or clean paper. My body knew before my pride could start lying. I stepped back. Grant's microphone angled closer. Problem? Yes, I said. This tray is not the beginner set. The room tightened. One orientation staff member reached toward it. Dr. Kessler stopped her with 2 words. Gloves first. That was why I liked practical people. Panic became a checklist before it became theater. Grant gave a small laugh. Strong reaction to a sealed tray. Strong reaction to safety, I said. Or nerves. Nerves do not smell like that. Dr. Kessler leaned over the tray without touching it, then looked at the staff member. Remove it. Bring cotton, cedar, citrus peel, clean paper, and water from the verified table. Grant's expression stayed friendly. That made it worse. An angry person wanted to win the moment. A friendly person with a camera was already building the edit. We can pause, the staff member said. Keep rolling, Grant said lightly. Viewers like authenticity. I almost walked out. A clean exit was tempting. Nobody could make me perform after a setup that smelled wrong, and I had spent the last week teaching my spine that leaving was allowed. Then I saw 2 students glance from the tray to my badge. If I left, the clip would become exactly what the post wanted. Charity case boy panics under real standards. Grant did not need to prove anything if I gave him the shape of his caption, so I stayed. Verified materials only, I said, and the tray stays away from the table. Dr. Kessler looked at me over the top of her glasses. Good. Now work. The staff member brought the materials. Cotton, cedar, citrus peel, paper, water. Ordinary things. Grant's face said ordinary like it was a flaw. My hands disagreed. I built the card small. Damp paper first, enough to catch the flat mineral smell of rain against concrete. Cotton at the edge, clean without being blank. A scrape of cedar in the center, dry and patient. Citrus near the top, light enough to feel like a window opening instead of a product trying to flirt with someone's wallet. Grant watched as if my weakness were the decoration he had ordered. Very modest, he said. It is a doorway, I said. If it demands applause, it is probably a trap. One of the panel members took the card first. She closed her eyes for a second, then passed it to another evaluator. Nobody gasped. Nobody clutched a desk. Good. I was done trusting reactions that looked designed for thumbnails. The second evaluator said, Clear. Stable. The citrus gives permission to enter without rushing the person through. Dr. Kessler asked, What did you remove from the original plan after the tray changed? Pride, I said. Her mouth moved. Barely. Specifics. Anything that needed intensity to justify itself. The room had already become loud. The work needed to lower pressure, not prove I survived it. For a second, the room belonged to the answer instead of the post. Then students started clapping. It was smaller than graduation and more useful. They were not applauding a breakup, a scandal, or a romance prediction. They were applauding a choice I made with my hands after someone tried to make the room unsafe. Grant clapped too, still smiling, still letting the camera drink. 2 hours later, his edited clip hit Uniloop. The wrong tray was gone from the sequence. So was Dr. Kessler's safety order. The clip opened on my step back, cut to Grant asking if I was nervous, then jumped to my finished card while the caption called me bitter, defensive, and ungrateful for every door wealthy people had opened. I stared at the screen in my assigned room, sitting on a bare mattress with no sheets yet, and felt the old shame try to crawl back into my mouth. Darius called before I could decide whether the wall looked punchable. I am calling as a respectful, non-matchmaking crisis coordinator, he said. Cleaner branding. You saw it. I saw Grant edit a safety stop into a personality disorder. I hate his camera angle. It has villain cheekbones. Despite myself, I laughed once. Then his voice changed. Are you okay? No. Good. Honest answer. Do not comment while you are furious. Save everything. Send me the links if you want a backup. No heroic thread battles. You became very anti-ambush. Growth arc. Terrible reviews, valuable lessons. I sent him the links, not because he could solve it, and not because he was a hacker, a lawyer, or a miracle in sneakers. I sent them because witnesses mattered, and Darius had finally learned the difference between staging a scene and preserving one. Audrey called next. I looked at her name until the phone buzzed against my palm. My first instinct was to reject it. My second was worse, answer too quickly, because some part of me still believed her attention arrived with oxygen attached. I answered on the third ring. I reported the post, Audrey said. No hello? Audrey's greetings had always believed in arriving after the solution. Which one? The one using my image, Sterling House, and the graduation footage. They did not have permission to frame me as part of that story. Thank you for reporting your image, I said. The line went quiet for half a breath. That is all? That is a real thing. I am thanking you for the real thing. My grandfather can issue a statement that your fellowship is legitimate. My chest tightened. I could hear the good intention near the bad habit, and that made the whole thing harder. Audrey was learning that command language had consequences. She had not yet learned that help with a handle was still a handle. No, I said. Noah, he has credibility. So does Dr. Kessler. This is not the time to be proud. It is exactly the time to be careful, her voice cooled. You cannot reject help after living under my family's roof, and then act surprised when people question how you got somewhere. That one landed. It was too close to the caption, too close to the part of me that still measured my worth in borrowed rooms. I went quiet long enough that she said my name. I lived under a formal host arrangement, I said. Edwin put the limits in writing. You know that. If you want to correct the misuse of your image, correct it. If you want to speak for my fellowship, do not. I am trying to protect you. Then stop making protection sound like ownership. I ended the call before my old self could apologize for needing air. Dr. Kessler found me in the lab corridor 10 minutes later. She held a clear sleeve, a dated notebook, and the rough card I had made under pressure. You will date every draft, she said. You will seal witnessed samples. You will write the purpose of the work before you write the materials. People who confuse packaging with authorship hate records. Is this your version of comfort? Yes, it is weirdly effective. Then stop talking and sign the page. I signed. She signed as the witness. The orientation prompt card went into a clear sleeve with the time, prompt, verified materials, and a note about the removed tray. The sealed sample looked small and almost embarrassing in the folder. It also looked like mine. Hope did not arrive as a speech. It arrived as evidence that my hands had made something real before the edit tried to make me unreal. That night, after I finally put sheets on the mattress and pretended that counted as emotional stability, a private Uniloop message came from Grant Rourke. Nice save today. Still rubbing your ring finger when you pretend not to care? Some habits survive a marriage. I read it once, then again. The room seemed to lose sound. In this life, Audrey and I had never been married. No ring had ever sat on my hand. No one at Briar Coast had seen me wake from 6 years of silent dinners, cold rooms, and a love I had mistaken for duty until it wore my name down to a service role. Grant could have guessed, charity shame. He could have researched Sterling House. He could have watched graduation footage and learned my posture, my work, my exits. He should not have known the marriage existed. My thumb hovered over the message. For 1 second, I wanted to ask how. That was the stupidest urge in the world and also the most human. Pain knocks, and some wounded part of a person opens the door because at least it knows the right name. I locked the phone instead. Grant Rourke had walked into orientation as a smug student media host with a camera and a caption. He ended the day as the first person in this life who had knocked on the locked room inside my head. The first scent I ever sold was supposed to keep Harbor House's lights on. Before sunset, my loose work card was gone and Grant Rourke was marketing my idea. That was the rhythm of Port Larkin those first weeks. Every time I built a door, someone checked whether it had a price tag, a camera angle, or Audrey Sterling standing too close to it. Dr. Kessler did not let me turn Grant's message into a personality. She gave me 2 rules the next morning: date the work and keep moving. Then she handed me a short email from the Harbor House director about rising summer costs, approved resident privacy limits, and a line at the bottom that said, in the director's exact spirit, if you make this sad, I will reject it on site. She means that, Dr. Kessler said. I know. She once threatened to confiscate my martyr complex with a label maker. Reasonable woman. The fundraiser idea came from that email. Harbor House needed money, and I needed proof that my work could help without turning the center into poverty theater. Pity sold fast on Lime, so did Scandal. I wanted neither near the children who had once taught me that a closed door could still be safe if someone knocked first. We called the first run, Home Notes, cotton, cedar, citrus, clean paper. The memory of a room that let a person enter without grabbing their sleeve. I kept the material list simple because the point was never to impress someone into silence. The point was recognition, a small card for people who understood that home was less about a house and more about whether leaving cost them love. Dr. Kessler watched my first draft and said, useful, too mournful, I have been through a week. The buyer has not. Make the card breathe. I adjusted the citrus higher and softened the cedar. She was right, which was rude of her, professionally speaking. Before anything went public, we called the Harbor House director on video. She appeared from her office with a pen in her hand and the expression of someone already prepared to swat nonsense away from her doorway. "Rules," she said. "Good morning," I said. "Rules first, morning after." I held up the draft label. No resident names, no resident faces, no sob story, no Sterling family mention, no rescue boy packaging, and proceeds go through Harbor House under your terms. Better. She leaned closer to the screen. And no making the center sound like a haunted hallway that sells candles. That was one draft. It was one draft too many. Darius, who had arrived in Port Lark that morning with a camera bag, 2 portable chargers, and the fragile confidence of a man trying very hard not to ruin anyone's love life, lifted one hand from the side of the lab. "For the record, I support anti-haunted branding." The director studied him. "You are the microphone boy." Darius pressed a hand to his chest. "Recovering microphone boy. Recover faster. I should not have enjoyed that as much as I did." Darius had come to help stream the booth at First Makers Market because he said a fundraiser deserved clean footage and because apparently Anti-Ambush Friendship had a travel budget. Before I let him touch a camera, I made him sign a paper napkin with 3 rules: no surprise romance framing, no confession jokes, and no using the phrase meant to be within 20 feet of my work. He signed with tragic dignity. "My art is being suppressed. Your art tried to marry me off on a live stream? My art has entered therapy." That was why I let him stay. Darius joked like breathing, but when the line was clear, he stayed behind it. First Makers Market filled the campus courtyard with folding tables, nervous creators, parents pretending not to hover, and reporters hunting for the kind of young person success story adults could call inspiring without asking who it cost. Our booth was intentionally plain: white cards, small sealed sleeves, a sign with home notes and Harbor House's approved benefit language, no child photos, no sad music, no borrowed Sterling shine. For almost 30 minutes, it worked. People stopped because the card smelled familiar before it smelled impressive. One older student bought 3 and said it reminded her of moving into a dorm without crying in front of her parents. A staff member bought one for her desk. A reporter asked for the heartbreaking angle, and I pointed at the approved statement until she remembered reading was an auction. Then Audrey arrived. She did not arrive hidden, which mattered. She wore the polished calm of someone representing the Sterling Foundation and the caution of someone who knew I would notice every shortcut. She stopped at the edge of the booth instead of stepping behind it. "I am here for a foundation assignment," she said. "Student benefit projects. I wanted you to hear that from me." That was new. Audrey Sterling had once treated explanations like accessories other people could wear if they needed reassurance. Now she had brought one before taking a step closer. "Then keep it an assignment," I said. Her eyes moved over the booth, the approved language, Darius's camera, and Dr. Kessler's sealed record folder. "I can do that." I did not know whether she could. I knew she had said the words, and I knew I did not have to build a house inside them yet. Grant found her before the reporters did. He crossed the courtyard with his production assistant half a step behind him, carrying a tablet and a slim folder. Grant had the relaxed posture of a person who considered public space a renewable resource. His smile landed on Audrey first, then on the nearest camera. "Audrey Sterling at First Makers Market," he said. "Now the season has stakes." Audrey's expression cooled. "I am here for the Sterling Foundation." "Of course." Grant turned slightly, giving the camera their shared angle before anyone had agreed to share anything. "Great to see the foundation supporting young creators." There was the frame, Audrey beside Grant, the Sterling name beside his microphone, money beside a camera. A clean little picture for people who preferred implication because it came with no cleanup. My hands kept arranging sealed cards. Jealousy is embarrassing enough when it is private. In public, it should at least help with inventory. A reporter looked from Audrey to me. "Is Home Notes connected to the Sterling Foundation?" "No," I said. "Home Notes benefits Harbor House under the center's control. Dr. Kessler supervised the work process. Sterling Foundation is here as an observer." Grant made a sympathetic face so polished it deserved its own cleaning cloth. "That is a careful answer. Some people might say you are using a children's center to keep Audrey's attention after leaving Fairmont." The courtyard noise thinned around the question. The shape of it was familiar. Charity as leash, care as performance, children as props in the story Grant was selling because his version came with him in the center. My first response was anger. My second was the director's voice in my head, telling me to keep the center out of my dramatic weather. I lifted the tablet we had set for the booth stream and tapped the video call. The Harbor House director appeared on screen after 2 rings. "Is someone being stupid?" Darius whispered. "I love her." "Professionally," I said. The director looked into the camera. Harbor House approved home notes. Harbor House controls the language, the benefit, and the privacy rules. Noah does not speak for our children, and nobody here gets to use them as guilt props. Buy a card or move aside. For one perfect second, Grant had no clip-ready answer. Dr. Kessler, standing beside the booth, added, "The work is documented and supervised. The purpose is stated. The benefit terms are controlled by the center. Those are the relevant facts." Grant recovered fast, because men like him treated shame as a temporary lighting issue. Admirable. I only hope buyers know what story they are supporting. "They do," I said. Then they proved it. The line doubled. People who had been hovering stepped forward, and the question changed from, "Is this scandal?" to "Can I get two before they sell out?" Darius kept the stream steady. Dr. Kessler handled the sealed extras. Audrey stayed outside the booth, silent and visibly separate from the work. The director remained on the tablet long enough to scare one reporter into asking an intelligent question. "Home notes sold out before mid-afternoon. I should have felt pure triumph. Instead, I felt relief so sharp it almost hurt. Money would go to Harbor House through its own account. The story had stayed clean. The children had not become a backdrop for my revenge. For once, usefulness did not feel like a chain around my neck." Darius leaned toward me when the last card sold. "I would like the record to show that your non-haunted card has achieved a market sweep. Never call anything a market sweep again." "Fine. A capitalism hug?" "Worse. I am workshopping." Audrey's mouth moved slightly at the edge of the booth. It might have been almost a smile. I noticed, hated the small electricity of noticing, and turned back to the table because growth apparently still required manual labor. The crowd should have been the end of the section if life respected pacing. It did not. During the press surge after the sellout, Grant's production assistant came close to the booth with her folder held to her chest. I noticed her because she moved like someone trained to be invisible around cameras. She stood near Darius first, asking him which angle had the full booth in frame. Then she shifted near the work table while a reporter blocked my view with a question about whether Audrey's arrival had helped sales. "Harbor House helped sales," I said. "The product helped sales." Audrey followed the boundary I set. By the time the reporter moved, the assistant was already walking back toward Grant. That was all I knew then. A woman had stood near the work area during a crowd. Suspicion is useful, certainty needs proof, and I had promised myself I would stop building whole houses out of feelings people had not earned. At teardown, I found the empty slot. My loose working card was gone. It was not the sealed original. Dr. Kessler had that in her record folder, signed and sleeved from the morning. The missing card was messier, purpose line, material notes, a phrase I had written and crossed once, then written again. "A house is not a home until it lets you leave and welcomes you back." My stomach turned cold. Darius lowered his camera. "Tell me that was packed somewhere else. It was here." Dr. Kessler checked the folder, then the table. Her face did not change much, which was how I knew she was angry. "The sealed record is secure," she said. "Do not accuse without evidence. Do not ignore the pattern either. That is a very annoying middle path. Reality often lacks courtesy." Grant's voice cut across the courtyard before I could answer. "Audrey, one more shot!" He had positioned himself near a sponsor backdrop with Audrey beside him. The production assistant stood just outside the frame. Grant's hand settled at Audrey's waist like he had placed a logo there. Every ugly part of me woke up at once. In the first life, I had watched Audrey stand beside other polished men at events and told myself the ache in my chest was maturity. I had translated every public distance into strategy, every private coldness into stress, every missing reassurance into something I could fix if I became more useful. This time, I did nothing. Audrey did. She removed Grant's hand from her waist with 2 fingers and stepped out of the camera angle. "Do not touch me or use me to market this," she said. "Clear. Public. No metaphor. No polished detour." The courtyard went quiet enough for the sentence to travel. Grant's smile held for half a second too long. "No one meant anything by it." "I did," Audrey said. "That is why I said it. I felt satisfaction, jealousy, grief, and one tiny inconvenient thread of respect arrive in the same terrible package." Audrey had not apologized to me. She had not repaired years of assumption. She had simply stopped a hand and a story from using her body as marketing. That mattered. It did not buy her access. When she looked toward me, I gave one small nod. Acknowledgement, not invitation. Her shoulders lowered by a fraction, and then she looked away first. Grant laughed softly into the nearest microphone. "Strong boundaries all around today, inspiring theme." Nobody laughed with him. That should have warned him. It did not. By evening, his teaser hit Uniloop. Anchor. The image showed Grant beside a dark, expensive-looking card with a caption about chosen homes, safe returns, and how real creators did not need to hide behind pity projects. The final line used my stolen phrase with the bones rearranged. "A house becomes home when it anchors who deserves to stay." I read it 3 times, each one worse than the last. He had taken the materials and missed the meaning. Of course he had. Grant could copy cedar, cotton, citrus, and a sentence about home. He could not understand why the door needed to open both ways because he had never imagined being grateful for an exit. Then the challenge loaded under the post. Founders Night. Blind panel. Anchor welcomes any imitator brave enough to claim originality. Darius stared at my phone over my shoulder. He stole your card and called you the knockoff. That is villain behavior with a marketing budget. We do not know he stole it. Fine, he spiritually burgled you. That is not a standard of proof. It should be. Dr. Kessler took the phone, read the post, and handed it back. Do you want a public complaint or a public answer? I already knew the answer. That was the part that scared me. Audrey approached from the edge of the courtyard before I could speak. She had stayed after the market, far enough not to crowd the booth, and close enough to see the theft land. I can ask the event staff to remove him from the sponsor line, she said. I can also make a public statement that there is no Sterling partnership with him. There was the old Audrey shape again, solution first, feeling somewhere behind it wearing expensive shoes. But this time she had asked what she could do, she had not announced what would happen. Make the image statement if you choose, I said. For yourself. Do not turn this into Sterling Foundation versus Grant. Her jaw tightened. He is stealing from you. Then I need to prove what he cannot steal. You should not have to. I agree. That surprised her. It surprised me too. I had become so used to refusing help that agreement felt like stepping onto an unfamiliar floor. I continued. But if your family pressure removes him now, the story becomes rich people fighting over a charity case. That is the frame he wants. I need him in front of a blind panel. Dr. Kessler said, Founders Night contest authorship if the terms are controlled. Darius raised his hand. I vote for controlled terms and also snacks, because revenge on an empty stomach is how people make bad speeches. You are not naming the operation, I said. I had 3 titles ready. Delete them. Emotionally, legally, spiritually, and from the napkin. At last that day, my anger made room for something cleaner than rage. The card might have been stolen. The phrase definitely was. Grant had taken my care, history, Audrey's image, Harbor House's name, and a concept about leaving safely, then tried to sell it back to the world as proof that he deserved the room. Fine. At Founders Night he could bring Anchor, his cameras, his sponsor Grin, and every borrowed word he wanted. I would bring the part he did not know how to copy. I accepted the challenge before my fear could negotiate. The confirmation posted under Grant's teaser, plain and small beneath all his polish. Noah Voss accepts blind terms. Darius read it out loud like a sports announcer who had accidentally discovered ethics. Dr. Kessler started listing what had to be sealed and dated. Audrey stood at the edge of our little circle, present and uninvited into the center, which was exactly where the boundary belonged. My loose work card was missing. Grant had a name, a teaser, and my phrase wearing his cologne. Founders Night would put the copy and the creator in front of people who could not see the packaging. Since Grant messaged me about the marriage, this was the first time I wanted him to keep smiling. Grant presented every ingredient from my missing work card, which was unfortunate for him because the list was not the part that made the scent mine. If authorship lived in cotton, cedar, citrus, and a line about home, then every grocery receipt in the country was one emotional breakdown away from becoming art. Founders Night looked neutral on paper. Blind panel. Identical safe-based materials. Coded samples before labels. No Sterling Foundation intervention, no public complaint, no dramatic speech about stolen souls, which was rude because I had been emotionally preparing several. Grant treated the terms like a gift. The audience would still see his packaging before the panel judged anything. Dark cards. Heavy paper. A display lit like it Do not help. I am helping silently. That was not silent. Dr. Kessler gave both of us one look and somehow reduced our combined age by 4 years. Grant arrived with his production assistant, 2 event staff members orbiting him, and the relaxed confidence of a man surrounded by future captions. Audrey stood across the room near the sponsor line, not beside him, not beside me, and not pretending the difference was accidental. I noticed. Then I made myself look at my own table because growth was apparently a repetitive manual task. The event host explained the terms. Anchor and my entry would be presented blind to the panel first. After the panel recorded its response, the labels and process records could be shown. Grant smiled through the whole introduction, all invented fairness, posture, and expensive patience. When Anchor went forward, he did exactly what thieves with good lighting always did. He recited feeling instead of proving it. A home ed. Every word had my fingerprints wearing his cologne. The sample itself was polished. I hated that. Petty satisfaction is cleaner when the copy is obviously terrible. Anchor was not terrible. It was smooth, expensive, and emotionally vacant in the way a staged kitchen could look beautiful while never surviving one real meal. The first panel member smelled the coated strip and nodded. Pleasant, the second said. Balanced, the third paused longer. Familiar, but I am not sure it tells me who is allowed to leave. The host asked the panel to mark its first response before anyone spoke again. Pens scratched. Grant's display lights hummed. The audience waited for the kind of knockout that makes theft look like confidence. Darius leaned close enough to breathe. Pleasant is judge language for this, has furniture but no pulse. I almost smiled. Almost? Grant did not. His eyes slid toward me, and I saw the irritation under the polish. The stolen list had not become a stolen reaction. Instead, the panel had handed him faint praise in a paper cup. Then it was my turn, and the easiest mistake would have been trying to defend Home Notes by rebuilding it louder. I wanted to put the missing card back on the table with a witness, a spotlight, and a small choir of petty justice. I wanted the room to understand that he had taken the line, taken the shape, taken the wound, and still somehow missed the door. But Home Notes belonged to First Maker's Market. It belonged to the Harbor House director telling reporters to buy a card or move aside. It belonged to the people who had understood home, so I built the work that came after. Home, finally. I kept the base materials plain: cotton, citrus, clean paper, cedar, water. Then I changed the order until the first impression felt like rain cooling a threshold instead of a room demanding proof. The cotton came softer, and later, the citrus opened like a window. The paper sat dry at the edge because memory did not need to flood the whole place. The cedar warmed in the center, steady without grabbing. My hands moved calmly, my chest did not. Sterling House tried to rise in the back of my head, the guest suite, the entry table, the key I had returned, Audrey in a doorway offering practical reasons that sounded almost like care. Then Harbor House answered it, labels on donation shelves, a director who rejected home. Home had never been the expensive room. Home was the place that let me leave without charging love as a fee. When the coated strip reached the panel, the room thinned around me. No cameras mattered. No packaging mattered. Even Audrey, standing too still near the sponsor line, became something I could not afford to interpret. The first panel member inhaled, then looked down at her notes. This feels like arriving after you were expected, not summoned, the second said. There is movement, the opening is gentle, but the center holds. The third asked, why leave the paper so dry? I answered from my chair because the blind terms allowed process questions after first response, and because Grant had already made the mistake of thinking ingredients were a confession. Because memory should be present without soaking the room, I said. The person entering has to know the past exists, but the door still opens now. Grant's laugh was soft. That sounds poetic. It uses the same family of materials as anchor. A door and a cage can both use hinges, I said. The question is, what happens when someone reaches for the handle? The panel went quiet in the best possible way. Dr. Kessler did not smile. Her face suggested smiling was a luxury material awaiting peer review. But she set her pen down, and I knew she had heard the answer. Land. The decision came faster than Grant's face was ready to receive. For one slow breath, nobody moved. The host checked the signed panel card as if the answer might rearrange itself out of sympathy. It did not. Home finally won the blind panel. For half a second, the room forgot to perform sophistication. People clapped like the answer had relieved them. I sat very still because standing too quickly might have made me look triumphant, and my knees were negotiating with several legal departments. Grant clapped too. 1, 2, 3 polite strikes of palm against palm. He looked like a statue receiving bad news. Only after the panel signed the decision did Dr. Kessler place the dated record folder on the table. She showed the sealed Home Notes original, the market work record, and the dated development page for Home, finally. No lecture, no courtroom performance, just enough proof to make the timeline visible after the work had already won. The panel decision was blind, she said. These records establish process, not preference. That was Dr. Kessler's version of a victory speech, efficient, unromantic, and capable of bruising a liar from across the room. An event representative approached with a small envelope and a face full of official excitement. Noah Voss, the panel would like to invite Home, finally, to the American Scent Innovation Showcase. Hearing my full name in that sentence did something strange to me. For years, Noah Voss had sounded like the boy attached to someone else's house, someone else's generosity, someone else's future. In that room, after a blind win, it sounded like a person with work that could travel under its own weight. Darius whispered, National Showcase. Casual, tiny evening, no emotional consequences at all. I am going to throw that travel pillow into the ocean. It served its country. I laughed once, and the sound came out shaky enough that he stopped joking. Audrey waited until the congratulations thinned before she approached. She stopped at the edge of my table, the same distance she had kept at the market, and I hated how much that restraint registered. You were right, she said. He had the language, not the work. The panel said that. I am saying it too. There was a time when I would have collected those words like proof that the sun had chosen me personally. This time, I let them be words, useful, not sacred. She looked at the display, then at the envelope from the American Scent Innovation Showcase. At the market, when I stopped him from using me in the photo. Did that change anything? The honest answer had edges. It changed that moment, I said. Her face tightened, but she stayed. Audrey, protecting your own consent was good. It was also yours. It was not a favor you did for me that I repay with access. She looked down once. I know. Do you? The question was not kind. It was fair, which sometimes felt worse. Audrey drew a breath. I am sorry you thought I was trying to buy my way back in. The sentence came out polished and wrong. Then she heard it. I saw the exact moment because her mouth stopped like she had stepped on glass. She closed her eyes for half a second. No, that is not right. I waited. My old self would have rescued her from the silence. My new self had become annoyingly committed to letting adults carry their own furniture. Audrey opened her eyes again. I do not know how to say this without making it about whether you accept it. Then start with what you did. Her fingers curled around the strap of her bag. What I did. Name the conduct. Name the harm. Name what changes. That is the minimum. Regret is a weather report. Repair is behavior. She absorbed that like a person realizing the door had a lock on both sides. I treated your future like something I could schedule, she said slowly. I treated support as if it gave me a vote. I expected you to read what I wanted and called it care when it served me. The words hit harder because they were close. Too close for me to joke. I picked up my folder. That is a beginning. Not enough. No. It hurt to say. It hurt more that she accepted it without arguing. Grant intercepted me near the side hallway before I reached the exit. The applause was still leaking through the room behind us. His smile was gone, and without it, his face looked younger and meaner. Audrey was several steps back. Darius had turned toward me, but I lifted one hand. Not yet. I wanted to hear the shape of the next knife before I named it. Congratulations, Grant said. National attention suits you. That sounded painful to say. You should enjoy it while the story holds. His gaze dropped to my left hand. Still checking the finger when you think no one notices? My thumb stopped against my bare ring finger. Grant's voice lowered. You did that after the clinic report too? Same little circle, same face like the paper had killed you before the room did. The hallway narrowed. In this life there had been no marriage, no clinic report, no apartment where a piece of paper turned Audrey's silence into something I thought I could never survive. No one at Founders Night should have known that wound existed, let alone the gesture my body had made around it. Grant leaned closer. Not enough to touch me, just enough to make the sentence private. Careful, Noah, some doors open twice. Then he walked away before I could ask the question he had baited. Behind me, the room was still celebrating home, finally. In front of me, Grant Rourke had just put his hand on a memory that had never happened here. The blind panel had proved he could not copy my work. Now I had to prove he had copied my life. The night I won my first public challenge, Grant told me something no one in this life could have known. I should have slept after that. Healthy people probably would have celebrated, hydrated, and made one responsible spreadsheet. I sat on the edge of my bed until sunrise with the American Scent Innovation Showcase invitation on my desk and my bare ring finger burning like it had been caught lying. By morning, fear had become useful enough to hold. I did not message Grant asking how. That was the trap he had laid in front of me. Pain loves a familiar address, and Grant had just proven he knew mine. So I chose a crowded coffee shop off campus, a table near the counter, and a lie small enough that only another person with my first life in his head could correct it. Grant arrived exactly on time, because villains with media training treated punctuality like evidence of innocence. Brave, he said, sliding into the chair across from me. Meeting after a win. Public room, I said. Witnesses. Bad acoustics for drama. He smiled. You think witnesses protect you? No, I think they annoy you. That one landed, petty but educational. I set my phone face up on the table, not recording, just visible. Then I gave him the false memory. The clinic report came after the Friday argument, I said. The one in the apartment, when Audrey said I loved being owed. Grant's eyes sharpened before his mouth remembered to stay relaxed. Tuesday, he said. My pulse went cold. He leaned back. It was Tuesday, and that is not what she said. I kept my face still. Inside, every locked room in me opened a crack. Grant lowered his voice. She said, You make hair feel like a bill I never signed? You stood by the kitchen counter and rubbed your ring finger until your skin went red. Then you apologized to her. That was always your problem. You apologized when other people cut you. The confirmation hit cold. Not a guess. Not a background search. Not a lucky cruelty pulled from public footage. Grant Rourke remembered. I had wanted confirmation. I had not expected it to feel like being robbed twice. Once by the life that hurt me, and once by the man smiling because he had kept a key. You look relieved, he said. I look like I am deciding whether the coffee is worth finishing. Still performing calm, still mistaking narration for ownership. His smile thinned. Then the terms came out. He wanted me out of the American Scent Innovation Showcase. He wanted a public concession that home, finally, was derivative of anchor. He wanted me to stop interfering with Audrey, which was a fascinating phrase from a man who kept putting his hands, cameras, and captions where nobody had invited them. If I refused, he would turn my care system history, Sterling House and Harbor House, into a national story about a manufactured talent who bit every hand that fed him. He said it softly. That made it uglier. Loud threats ask to be witnessed. Soft threats assume you already know, the room belongs to them. You do not even want Audrey, I said. Grant's expression flickered. Small. Enough! You want the authorship, I continued. The status, the photo beside Audrey, the story where every door opens because your name is on it. He laughed once. You always did get sentimental around doors. Which part of the clinic story did you touch? The smile left him completely. For once since I had met him, Grant looked less like a camera angle and more like a person protecting a loaded drawer. Careful, he said. You brought up the report. I am asking which part was yours. He tapped one finger against the table. One report did 6 years of work. That is all you get for free. Humor stopped. The coffee shop noise kept moving around us. Cups, chairs, a blender, someone laughing near the pickup counter. My body heard none of it cleanly. One report, 6 years, the paper I had believed. The evidence that had turned a cold marriage into a grave I thought I deserved. A terrible hope entered the room. If Grant had touched that report, then the worst thing I believed about that marriage might not have been true. That did not absolve Audrey. It did not rewrite the silent dinners, the ignored calls, the way she had let duty replace affection until I became furniture with a pulse. But it cracked the evidence I had used to hate myself. Grant saw the change in me and tried to turn it. Walk away from the showcase, he said. Let the past stay useful. I stood. No. Noah, you corrected the date, I said. You gave me enough. Then I left before my hands could shake where he would enjoy it. Darius was the first person I told. Not Dr. Kessler, not Audrey, definitely not Edwin. Darius, who had once tried to turn my life into a graduation romance segment and had since developed the rare male skill of learning from public embarrassment, sat across from me in a campus study room while I told him the impossible part. I told him about waking up on graduation morning with 6 years in my head. I told him Grant knew the marriage, the ring finger habit, and the clinic report. I showed him the private message and repeated the coffee shop correction. Darius did not speak for a long time. Then he said, I am rating his villain monologue a 2 out of 10. I stared at him. For timing, he said. The content is horrifying. The staging is lazy. Coffee shop intimidation after a blind panel loss? Desperate brand pivot. I laughed once and it almost broke in the middle. Darius's face changed. I believe you. 3 words. No fireworks. No cross-examination. No demand that I prove a life I had barely survived the first time. Something in my chest loosened so fast it hurt. You cannot tell anyone, I said. I know. Dr. Kessler gets current evidence only. Theft, threats, safety, records. No rebirth. Audrey? No. He nodded. Rules? That was why I had chosen him. Darius could joke the paint off a wall, but once a boundary had a name, he treated it like architecture. We made 3 rules before lunch. Public meetings only. Duplicate every current record. No solo response to Grant, even if he used a private memory as bait. Then I told Dr. Kessler the version she could safely use. Grant had threatened my showcase slot, had access to my work language, and might try to obtain my next process. She listened without interrupting. No unsafe traps, she said. I know. No incomplete formula that could harm someone. I know. No emotional heroics dressed as strategy. That one feels targeted. It is. Then Darius asked to review his own first Maker's Market archive. Not hack, not recover, not perform a miracle with glowing screens and nonsense. He had streamed the booth for hours because he liked clean footage and because I had forbidden romance ambushes, which apparently left him with spare storage and a desire to become useful. The useful part arrived 20 minutes later. He found the first moment during the press surge after home notes sold out. Grant's production assistant stood near the booth with her folder against her chest. A reporter stepped between her and me. On Darius's side angle, the assistant's hand moved once, quick and practiced, sliding my loose work card under the folder flap before she turned away. My anger went quiet. Quiet anger is the one I trust least and use best. There, Darius said. Run it again. He did. No Zoom theater, no dramatic enhancement, Just a saved stream, a visible table, and a hand taking a card I had been told not to accuse anyone of taking until proof existed. The second moment was smaller and almost worse. For 3 seconds during the market stream, Grant's charity caption appeared under the assistant's profile on the public display beside the sponsor feed. Then, it vanished. Minutes later, the same language appeared on Grant's channel. Darius looked at me. That is not every order, but it is a link. It is enough to stop calling my suspicion a mood. Also enough to retire spiritually burgled as a legal theory? Never. It gave us courage in difficult times. Dr. Kessler watched both clips, then copied them into the records with the expression of a woman filing a knife where it belonged. Current evidence, she said. Keep it clean. Do not overstate it. You are allergic to joy. I am allergic to collapse after sloppy wording. Fair. Grant's threat had not been only about my work. He had started using sponsor meetings and staged proximity around Audrey, turning every hallway into a possible caption. I did not want to call her. I also did not want to let pride become a security plan. So I called. Audrey answered on the second ring. Are you all right? She asked. The question was too direct. It almost made me defensive on principle. I am setting a safety boundary, I said. She went quiet in the way people do when they realize the conversation has entered a room without cushions. Do not take private rides with Grant, I said. Do not meet him behind closed doors. Do not let him turn sponsor access into unannounced appearances. If he brings up Sterling House, Harbor House, or old records, keep it written and route it through Edwin. What happened? Enough that I am asking you to treat him as dangerous to your story, not just annoying to mine. Audrey breathed once. Does your worry mean you still love me? The old gravity was still there. Not cruel, not even manipulative in the polished way I knew too well, just my concern being pulled toward a promise before either of us had earned that shape. Worry is not a promise, I said. The line stayed quiet. Then Audrey said, I can follow those terms. No bargaining, no offer to send a statement, no Sterling-shaped solution trying to sprint ahead of the wound. Thank you, I said. After we hung up, I sent Edwin one short message. If anyone connected to Grant asks about Old Harbor House or Sterling House placement records, please preserve the request and do not answer by phone. Edwin replied 8 minutes later. Understood. That was all. It was enough to put one more door on a hinge. The decoy notebook came from Dr. Kessler's refusal to let me become reckless with better vocabulary. Grant had made my next process the target, so I gave him a process that looked tempting from a distance and failed where only arrogance would ignore it. The notebook held a plausible direction for a showcase piece, enough emotional language to smell like me, and one harmless flaw at the center. It admired a closed door instead of making room for a person to choose. Pretty, marketable, wrong. Dr. Kessler reviewed every page. No safety risk, she said. No safety risk, no usable complete formula, no usable complete formula. No chance a person using this as written harms anyone, only their taste. She looked at me. Sorry. Do not apologize. Accuracy matters. We placed the notebook in a monitored press access area during a scheduled lab visit, careless enough to tempt Grant's people and controlled enough that nobody innocent had to be endangered. I hated how calm I felt. In the first life, isolation had made every wound feel like fate. This time, the plan had witnesses, limits, and a mentor who would have confiscated my spine if I tried to martyr myself with stationery. By evening, the lab footage showed the same production assistant step into the area, photograph the open pages, slide the notebook under her folder, and leave. Dr. Kessler watched it once. Now we wait, she said. That is your least popular sentence. Good. The wait lasted less than a day. The American Scent Innovation Showcase updated its preliminary creator listings, and Grant Rourke's new concept appeared under a clean black title, Crown Line. The description praised permanence, legacy, and a door that proved its worth by staying closed. Darius read it over my shoulder and whispered, he stole the decoy and somehow made it emotionally worse. I stared at the listing until the satisfaction cooled into something sharper. Grant had taken the bait. The footage supported the market theft. Darius knew the truth. I could not tell the world. Dr. Kessler had the current records. Audrey had accepted safety terms without trying to purchase my concern. Edwin had preserved the record path. Since I woke up with 6 years of marriage in my head, Grant had forced me to react to him. Now he was reacting to my plan. That should have felt safe. It did not. A man who stole a harmless flaw after treating access like authorship would not become calmer when the flaw failed in public. Crownline was not the end of the trap. It was the part where the trap finally had his fingerprints on it. I knew the sample bottle was wrong the moment a teenager coughed, but by then Grant had already made my name the headline. The American Scent Innovation Showcase Youth Preview was supposed to be harmless. Small group, safe materials, staff nearby. A few teen volunteers giving early impressions before the national event turned every young creator into a walking audition tape. Dr. Kessler had reviewed my tray twice, then made me review it again because joy was apparently less important than basic survival. Darius wore an event lanyard like it had promoted him to democracy. "I am here as witness support," he said. "You are here because you promised not to name any operation. Witness support can have branding. Witness support can have silence." He looked wounded in 3 separate fonts, but he stopped. Grant stood across the preview space with crown line displayed in clean black packaging and a smile that made generosity look privately armed. His production assistant moved near his cases with a folder tucked against her chest. I noticed her. I noticed everyone after Founders Night. That did not give me permission to invent proof from posture, so I checked my own table instead. Label, outer seal, tamper band, code strip. All correct. The wrongness arrived inside the first drop. I touched the blotter behind the demo line before offering it forward, the way Dr. Kessler had drilled into me until caution became muscle. The scent opened too sharp. Not complex sharp, not clean sharp, just wrong, like a bright edge scraping the back of the throat. The teen volunteer nearest the table coughed once, then again, her eyes watered. Everything in me narrowed. "Step back," I said. "Hands away from the cards, everybody back." The staff member beside me started to ask a question, and I cut across it. "Medic, now." I capped the bottle, moved the tray away from the volunteers, and put my body between the table and the group without turning it into a heroic statue. Heroic statues are great until somebody realizes they blocked the exit. I pointed the teens toward the open side of the room and kept my voice flat enough that panic had nothing dramatic to grab. The volunteer said her eyes burned. That was where every joke in my body died. Dr. Kessler reached us with the on-site medic seconds later. Darius stopped filming the event floor and started clearing space. Event staff asked whether the product had been approved, whether I had changed the sample, whether the volunteer had allergies. The questions mattered. The timing still felt like being pelted with clipboards while a person was trying to breathe. "She comes first," I said. The medic flushed her eyes and moved her to a quieter chair. The symptoms eased fast, which was the only reason my hands did not start shaking in front of the cameras. The medic cleared her in the room, and the prepared caption lost whatever worse ending it had been built to use. Still, a teenager had coughed near my table. That fact did not care how carefully I had packed the tray. I stayed until the medic cleared her. I apologized to her directly, not because I had chosen the switch, but because my table had become the place where she got hurt. Her privacy mattered more than my defense, so when a staff member asked whether she could be named in the incident report, I said no before my fear could make me selfish. Then, the post hit. Grant's channel already had the clip framed, titled, and dressed for punishment. Reckless student creator. Untrained fellowship. Youth preview halted after unsafe sample. The caption slid Harbor House into the sentence like a blade under a door, asking who had really been harmed by my sudden rise. Prepared headline. Prepared angle. Prepared pity turning into suspicion. The showcase paused my slot pending review. The Harbor House promotion tied to my work froze an hour later. For a few minutes, I stood in the service hallway with the sealed wrong bottle on the table, Dr. Kessler beside me, Darius pacing in the smallest angry circle physics allowed, and my name turning into a warning label on mine. It looked like Grant's first clean win. I hated giving him the word clean. Audrey called before I called her. I almost did not answer, because pride loves pretending a ringing phone is a moral test. Then I remembered that I had warned her to keep old record questions written and that boundaries work better when I do not treat every offer of help like a burglar. "Are you safe?" she asked. "The volunteer is safe. Are you?" I looked at the paused slot message on Dr. Kessler's tablet. Professionally, I am being turned into a cautionary pamphlet. The Sterling Foundation can cover the lost promotion. I can have our communications team correct the record. The old solution shape stepped forward. Money first, message second, feeling somewhere waiting for a badge. The difference was that her voice shook around it. "No money," I said. She went quiet. "No statement that clears me," I continued. "No family defense, no foundation rescue. If you say anything, you say only what belongs to you. What belongs to me? Your name? Your family's public role, whether Grant had permission to use either one." Audrey breathed once. "That is smaller than what I want to do." Good. The old Audrey would have treated that as defiance. This Audrey held the line long enough to make my chest hurt. "Then I will say that neither I nor the Sterling Foundation funded your fellowship, controlled your work, or authorized Grant to imply our endorsement," she said. "I will not speak for your sample. And you will not turn Harbor House into your proof." "I will not." She released the statement 20 minutes later. It was narrow, factual, and almost painful in how much it did not try to save me. She corrected Grant's implied Sterling frame, denied any endorsement he had hinted at, and stopped before my name became something her family polished for me. It did not unpause my slot. It did something smaller and harder. It respected the fence. Darius and Dr. Kessler found the first useful crack that evening. It came from boring footage, bad angles, and one accidental reflection. Darius had been standing near the sponsor display when the staff pulled preview footage for review. The display behind Grant's table had a glossy black side panel, and in that panel, for half a second, the room reflected backward. The assistant appeared in the reflection with two identical inner cases. One case left her hand. One case came back. The outer band on my tray still looked intact because the swap had happened inside the case before the final pass. The reflection did not show Grant giving an order. It did not even show her face clearly enough for a clean public claim. It showed hands, cases, timing, and a movement that finally gave my suspicion something heavier than anger. Dr. Kessler found the second crack inside the returned case. Under the foam insert sat the thin inner seal from my original bottle, folded flat and tucked where no volunteer would ever notice it. I had marked that seal in the lab before packing because Dr. Kessler enjoyed making my future paranoia useful. The wrong bottle had been placed under a case that still looked like mine from the outside. She held up the seal with tweezers and looked at me. "This supports a switch," she said. "It does not prove who ordered it." "I know, say it again because you're angry. It does not prove who ordered it." "Better." Darius leaned over the footage. "So the villain package is missing the villain receipt." "Darius, I'm respecting evidence while emotionally booing. Fair, the deal came after midnight. Grant did not call. Calls leave too much room for tone to betray a person. He sent a message clean enough to screenshot and dirty enough to smell like him. He could make the review move faster. He could remind the right people that youth previews were chaotic. He could help restore trust if I publicly acknowledged that Home finally had grown from Anchor's influence, transferred the disputed work rights, and thanked Grant's support along with Sterling Charity for making my training possible. Some people threaten the future. Grant preferred to make the target autograph the threat and call it gratitude. I read the message once, then again, because apparently I had developed a taste for indigestion. Dr. Kessler said, "No," I had guessed. "I wanted the room to enjoy certainty." Darius pointed at the phone. "I vote we mail him a glitter bomb labeled consequences. We are not doing evidence-based glitter." A coward sentence. The humor helped for exactly 2 seconds. Then my thumb found my bare ring finger and the old apartment rose in my head. The clinic report. Audrey's unanswered call. Grant's line in the coffee shop about one report doing 6 years of work. If I signed, Grant owned the work. If I only refused, he kept the old truth. So I offered him something he wanted more than my signature. I sent one photograph of a decoy page from the harmless notebook, cropped enough to show the emotional direction behind Crownline, and nothing that could endanger anyone. Then I wrote, "You want the rest of the pages, I want the truth about the clinic report." His answer came fast, "You are finally learning value." My stomach turned. I still typed, "Public place." He chose a hotel lounge with glass walls, afternoon traffic, and enough background noise to make a private recording messy. Then he added the sentence that cut deepest. "Come alone, and I will tell you what the report said after Audrey refused your final call." I stared at the sentence until the screen dimmed. Audrey had refused my final call. I remembered that. I remembered the phone lighting my hand in a dark hallway, the ring ending, the silence afterward becoming evidence because I had needed the pain to make sense. Grant had just tied that memory to the report like he had tied a ribbon around a knife. Darius read over my shoulder and stopped joking. "Rules," he said quietly. "Public meeting," I said. "No solo response. You will be inside sight. Dr. Kessler gets current evidence only. No rebirth." Dr. Kessler looked between us, catching the shape of limits she did not know the center of. She did not push. That was one of the reasons I trusted her. "No unsafe trade," she said. "Only decoy pages. No complete formula. No complete formula." She nodded once. "Then make him talk. Do not let him make you bleed for free." The hotel meeting was set for the next afternoon. My showcase slot was still paused. Harbor House was still paying for the scandal and frozen promotion and nervous messages. The reflected clip showed a switch, the seal supported it, and Audrey had corrected only the facts that belonged to her. Grant's terms treated me like I was desperate enough to sell my name back to him. I was going to sell him a fake door and make him pay with the truth. I offered Grant a fake notebook, and he paid for it with the truth about my first life. The hotel lounge had glass walls, low tables, and the kind of expensive silence people buy so nobody can hear their worst sentence clearly. Grant chose a corner seat with his back to the room. I chose the chair that kept Darius in my line of sight near the entrance, one hand around a coffee he had no intention of drinking. Grant noticed immediately. "I said alone," he said. "You said come alone." I did. Darius came separately because he makes independent mistakes. Across the lounge, Darius lifted 2 fingers in the saddest little salute. Grant's mouth tightened. No livestream, no livestream, no public accusation, no secret courtroom fantasy. I set my phone on the table face down. This meeting proves nothing by itself. Then why bring him? Because I promised myself I was done walking into rooms where your version is the only one that survives. The hotel server placed water between us and vanished with the professional grace of someone who had smelled rich boy poison and chosen a different ecosystem. Grant held out his hand. I placed 3 decoy pages on the table. Printed, cropped, harmless. Enough to look like the emotional spine behind Crownline, useless for anyone trying to build a real safe sample. Dr. Kessler had checked every line and looked offended by how marketable wrongness could be. Grant glanced at the pages and smiled. You always dress surrender up as principle. You always confuse possession with authorship. We all have hobbies. His smile thinned. I did not ask about the clinic report first. That was the bait sitting in front of me, shiny enough to ruin my judgment if I grabbed it whole. Why did the reckless student headline exist before the volunteer coughed? I asked. Grant looked amused. You think timing is evidence? I think prepared shame has a smell. Careful. Assistants are useful because they know what to prepare. Not an admission. Grant was too polished for that. It was worse in a way, because it showed the shape of the next sacrifice. If the switch became undeniable, his words had already picked the person who would absorb it. Useful because they can be blamed? I asked. He lifted one shoulder. Useful people understand hierarchy. My anger went cold again. I wanted to throw the water in his face. That would have been satisfying for half a second and strategically stupid for the rest of my life. So I kept my hands on the table and let silence make him fill the room. The report, I said. Grant looked down at the decoy pages. You really did build your whole misery around one envelope. Which part was real? He laughed once, soft and ugly. The paper was real. The fear was real. Your face when you read it was real. Which part was true? His eyes sharpened without a camera to soften them. None of the part that made you hate yourself, he said. The lounge did not move. My body did. My throat closed. My fingers pressed into the table. I had imagined a dozen answers since the coffee shop, and somehow my mind still arrived empty when the sentence landed. Grant's smile widened. The clinic report was forged, he said. The affair evidence was staged. Audrey was never pregnant. There was no child waiting anywhere for you to discover. There was only timing, paper, and a man who wanted you to finally understand you had lost. The words entered me one at a time. Forged. Staged. No child. No real report. For 6 years in my memory, I had carried that lie like proof that the worst version of me had been factual. I had used it to explain why Audrey's silence felt deserved, why my marriage had become a hallway with no doors, why every apology had to come from me first. Grant had not invented the cold dinners. He had not invented the way Audrey let duty replace affection until my care turned into furniture with a pulse. Those memories stayed, but the evidence that made me hate my own body for believing her had just cracked in half. The final call, I said. Grant's expression brightened. Still sentimental. Did you block it? No. He leaned back. That was the beautiful part. She ignored you herself. You two had argued. She was tired of your need. You called. She watched it ring. I only made sure the report arrived while the silence was still warm. The lie broke. The wound stayed. That was the part I hated most. Relief did not arrive clean. It came carrying grief by the collar. Grant had forged the evidence. Audrey had still refused the call. I could stop believing one poison and still remember the taste of the other. Why us? I asked. Grant's jaw shifted. A small thing. His first honest loss of polish. Because you were an accident, he said. You always were. The old fear in me recognized the word. Charity case. Dependent. Useful if placed correctly. Accident was Grant's version, polished for his own mirror. Audrey was supposed to owe me, he said. Her family, the story, the rescue. I had arranged the situation. I had the path. Then some harbor house boy ran in first and became the person she half remembered. My pulse went quiet. I remembered the teenage rescue in pieces, Audrey's panic, my hand around hers, the way adults later folded gratitude into a host placement until help and obligation blurred. I had never known who set the danger in motion. Grant said it like he was complaining about a stolen reservation. You arranged her abduction, I said. Do not make it crude. You arranged it. His eyes hardened. I arranged a rescue. You stole the role. There are moments when anger gets so large it stops asking for volume. I pictured Audrey as a teenager with a memory gap she had never fully owned. I pictured Edwin turning protection into structure, structure into expectations, and expectations into a house where I kept trying to earn air. Then I pictured Grant watching the first life break and treating the problem as if he had not been centered enough. What did you not fabricate? I asked. Grant's smile returned with the timing of a prepared line. Her contempt, he said. Her refusal, her little silences, the way she let you serve until service bored her. I did not need to fake that. I only gave you paper strong enough to stop excusing it. I heard his pleasure. I also heard the trap. If I accepted his version whole, Audrey became nothing but his evidence. If I rejected all of it, I became the same idiot who once apologized while bleeding. So I did the hardest thing I had learned to do. I separated the wounds. You forged the report, I said. You staged the affair evidence. You set up the teenage attack. You used her silence because you knew exactly where it would cut. Grant's eyes cooled. And Audrey still made choices, I remember, I continued. That part is not yours to absolve or decorate. The first real anger crossed his face. Not performance, not media cruelty, just rage that I had taken away his favorite toy, the right to define every person in the room. I stood. Enjoy the pages. You think those are enough? He asked. For you? Probably. I left them on the table. Darius met me near the entrance, face already stripped of every joke. He did not ask what Grant said until we were outside and away from the glass. Clinic report was forged, I said. He closed his eyes once. No child, I said. The words scraped. The affair evidence was staged. He says Audrey ignored the call herself. He says he arranged the old abduction so he could be the rescuer. Darius looked like he wanted to become violent and knew I needed him to become useful. What do we do? He asked. We prove current harm first. Grant helped with that before sunset because arrogance is a generous donor when properly irritated. His public statement blamed the youth preview switch on an unauthorized action by his production assistant. He announced that she had been removed from his team and implied she had mishandled materials after becoming overzealous about rival creators. It was a tidy sentence. Too tidy. People like Grant loved disposable workers until the disposal needed witnesses. The assistant contacted Darius that night through the event contact he had used for footage requests. Her message said she did not want a stage or sympathy. Her statement said that if Grant was going to ruin her career for following his order, she wanted the record to show him bleeding on the same document. Darius called me before opening the file. Current evidence only? He asked. Current evidence only. Dr. Kessler can see this? If it proves the switch? The voice note was short. Grant's voice, stripped of charm by the flatness of a phone microphone, said, Use the identical case. Keep the outer band clean. The first cough gives us the headline. After that came the prepared headline file, time-stamped before the preview, and the assistant's direct statement that he had threatened to ruin her career if she did not take the blame. I sat very still while Dr. Kessler listened. Her face did not move until the end. Then she closed the laptop with both hands. That is current evidence, she said. Yes, we use exactly what it proves. Yes. Her eyes stayed on me. No extra truth smuggled inside the proof because you are hurting. I hated how well she knew the dangerous version of me. Exactly what it proves, I said. Edwin's file arrived the next morning. On the call, Edwin told me Audrey had asked him to reopen the old rescue records after my safety warning, then pushed harder after Grant's public scapegoat statement. Edwin said she did not know about the first life or what Grant had just told me in the lounge. From what he had seen, she only knew Grant had started circling Harper House, Sterling House, and old placement records with a smile too prepared to be harmless. Edwin asked us both to join a private call. He looked older on the screen than I remembered from the graduation call, or maybe I had finally stopped seeing him as the ceiling of every room. He did not begin with authority. He began with the file. This never identified the organizer at the time, Edwin said. It was enough to show that the rescue was real, that Audrey's memory was fragmented, and that your placement followed the incident. It was never enough to accuse a teenage suspect publicly. The archive held an old plate image, a payment trail through intermediaries, and a witness note about a young man near the pickup point. None of it shouted Grant's name across the room. Placed beside Grant's account in the lounge, it stopped looking like coincidence. Audrey sat beside Edwin on the call, silent at first. Then Edwin looked at me. You are the one who reached her first, he said. That much was always clear. The sentence should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like someone had finally labeled a wound after I had spent years paying rent on it. Audrey covered her mouth with one hand. She did not make the moment about being forgiven. She did not ask me to explain the marriage she did not remember, or the report she did not know had existed, or why my face probably looked like every locked door in me had opened at once. She only said, I need to speak to you privately, if you will allow it. I almost said no, not because she did not deserve to speak, because part of me wanted to punish the timing. Another part wanted to accept anything that sounded like repair because my body was exhausted and still loved her in the inconvenient, humiliating way bodies sometimes keep old addresses. 10 minutes, I said. No solutions first. She nodded. When Edwin left the call, Audrey stayed seated with her hands visible on the table. Controlled. Terrified, maybe, but I only knew what she showed and what she said. I assumed your birthday labor, she began. I treated your attention like infrastructure. At Juniper Cup, I insulted someone doing her job because I expected the room to bend around me. My throat tightened. She kept going. I invoked my family's support when you chose Briar Coast. I tried to manage your image when Grant attacked you. I treated one correct boundary at the market like it should count toward romantic credit. I made your life feel like a shared asset because I benefited when you forgot it belonged to you. The apology stripped away polish, the elegant side door, and the familiar fake phrase, I am sorry you felt. What remained was conduct, harm, change. What changes? I asked. Audrey looked directly at the camera. I will speak only where I have authority. Evidence stays evidence, not a side door for money or access. I will stop asking whether your concern means love. If you choose any future contact with me, it will not be because I made myself useful during a crisis. That one hurt, because it was close enough to the thing I had needed that my first instinct was to forgive too much too fast. I looked away, toward the blank wall beside the laptop, and made myself breathe. I accept the accountability, I said. I accept bounded cooperation against Grant. Her face changed around hope, and I stopped it before it could run. I am not accepting romance. I am not calling this forgiveness. I still remember 6 years, you do not. And even without that, this life gave me enough to require time. Audrey swallowed. I understand. She sounded like she did. That was good. It was not a contract with the future. By afternoon, our evidence table had 2 piles. The first pile could survive daylight. The reflected switch footage, my original inner seal, Grant's voice note, the prepared headline file, the assistant's direct statement, Audrey's narrow public correction, and Edwin's archived rescue record limited to what it actually showed. The second pile could destroy faster and rot everything it touched, rebirth, the forged reproductive claim from the first life, the staged affair evidence, and the private details of Audrey's old trauma. Revenge wanted the second pile. So did the ugliest part of me. The part that had read the clinic report and believed I deserved humiliation, wanted to drag every lie into sunlight until Grant had nowhere left to stand. Then I pictured the teen volunteers' watering eyes. I pictured Harbor House being turned into a scandal machine. I pictured Audrey's teenage fear becoming public entertainment because I had confused exposure with justice. Care should make people freer. I had said that about everyone except myself for years. Now I had to prove I meant it when the restraint cost me something. We release current sabotage, I said. We use the rescue record only to correct the origin if Grant attacks it. Rebirth stays private. The intimate first life fraud stays private. Dr. Kessler said. Clean case, clean boundary. Audrey said nothing for a moment. Then she said, thank you for not using what would hurt me most. I met her eyes through the screen. I am not protecting you because you belong to me. I know, she said. For once, I believed she was trying to. My showcase slot was still paused when I sent the evidence packet through the proper review channel. Grant still had Crown Line listed, still had sponsor reach, still had a stolen decoy flaw sitting in his display like a prop staged to prove ownership. But the old report no longer owned me. The current sabotage had a voice. By the time I walked onto the national showcase stage, Grant had the notebook he stole, Audrey's face in his sponsor reel, and a presentation still staged as if Audrey and I were too divided to answer him from the same side. My showcase slot was reinstated 2 hours before judging, which sounded dramatic until I read the message and realized the organizers had chosen the most stressful possible version of fair. The reflected switch footage, the original inner seal, and the assistant's statement were enough to put me back in the field. They were not going to erase the blind entries, cancel Crown Line from the locked lineup, or turn the American Scent Innovation Showcase into a trial with better lighting. Event staff barred Grant's team from the backstage prep. Darius looked offended by the universe. Then we release the voice note? Then we release exactly what it proves. Personal growth is ruining my timing. It helped. A little. Then I stepped behind the curtain and saw Grant on the monitor, smiling like consequences were a lighting problem. Crown Line looked expensive. I could give him that. The display was clean, the bottle was tall, and the sponsor reel moved through polished images of ambition, charity, and Audrey Sterling's face with the confidence of a thief wearing a borrowed suit. The reel never said she endorsed him. It only arranged her image beside his work until denial would look rude. That was Grant's favorite habitat. The space where saying no made you seem dramatic. He presented Crown Line as a fragrance about legacy. Of course he did. Men like Grant loved legacy because it sounded nobler than theft. The judges sampled from the blind strip first, then the public presentation followed, and for the first few seconds, the room gave Crown Line. Then the harmless flaw I had planted in the decoy notebook woke up and embarrassed him in formaware. The finish went flat, metallic, thin in a way that made the pretty opening feel like a door painted on a wall. It did not hurt anyone. It did not violate safety. It simply revealed the difference between understanding a note and stealing a sentence where the note once stood. Across the aisle, Darius leaned toward me and whispered, "That is a luxury candle having a boardroom panic attack. I should not have enjoyed it." I enjoyed it responsibly. Grant's smile held for the cameras, but the room changed around him. The judges did not gasp. Real professionals rarely gave villains the courtesy of dramatic punctuation. They wrote notes, asked him to clarify the transition, and listened while he tried to turn a collapse into a philosophy. Then Audrey requested the floor. My first instinct was still the old one: tense, measure, prepare to refuse. The body remembers being managed before the mind remembers the boundary. But Audrey did not look at me for permission or praise. She walked to the event microphone because her image had been used, and that was hers to answer. Grant's expression sharpened. "Audrey, this is really a private misunderstanding." "There is no private agreement to misunderstand," she said. The room quieted. She kept her voice level, the same polished control that used to make every room rearrange itself for her. This time, she used it to stop a lie instead of preserving one. "I am not engaged to Grant Rourke. I am not his romantic partner. I have no business partnership with Crownline. I did not authorize my image, my family role, or the Sterling Foundation to endorse his entry." Grant lifted one hand like he could smooth the air. The reel reflected a shared philanthropic vision. "No," Audrey said. "It reflected unauthorized proximity." That line landed harder than a slap because she did not decorate it. She did not call herself confused. She did not ask anyone to understand the pressure. She did not look over at me like a student waiting for extra credit in redemption class. She only returned the microphone and stepped back. For one dangerous second, I wanted to breathe like that solved more than it did. It did not, but it solved this. Then my name was called. Home finally had answered the wound of where I came from. Open Door had to answer the question I was still afraid to touch: what made a place yours after you stopped letting people trap you with gratitude? I placed the sample on the stand with both hands. Dr. Kessler had taught me that stage nerves loved making fingers stupid. The Harbor House director appeared by video from an empty office, no residents on camera, no children turned into proof. Darius gave me one nod from the aisle. Audrey stood near Edwin, hands folded, silent. Grant watched like a man trying to calculate how much of my life he could still invoice. "Open Door is about choice," I said. "Entering because you want to." I kept the explanation short because the work was supposed to carry the feeling. Clean cotton came first, airy rather than innocent. Citrus opened instead of begged. Cedar sat underneath, familiar but still unlocked. Rain moved through the middle because every door worth keeping had to survive weather. I left the ratios, genius costume, and desperate lecture outside the room where they belonged. Just a door. Grant laughed under his breath, loud enough for the nearest microphone to catch the shape of contempt. Recycled sentiment. I kept my eyes on the judges. If it were that easy to copy, Crownline would have a finish. Darius made a sound that may have been a cough if a cough had ever filed for petty damages. The blind panel took longer with Open Door than it had with Crownline. That scared me more than instant praise would have. They returned to the strips, asked for the story again, and listened when the Harbor House director confirmed that any public benefit tied to my work would protect resident privacy and center control. Dr. Kessler answered one safety question and stopped there, because she had the rare academic gift of not turning a microphone into a habitat. Then the public side opened. People did not cheer at first. They got quiet. That mattered more. I watched strangers lean toward the strips like the scent had given them a handle to a room they had left years ago. One judge closed her eyes, opened them, and wrote a sentence so slowly that my pulse started doing unpaid labor. When the final blind results came in, Open Door placed first. For a second, I did not move. The applause arrived late and then all at once. Dr. Kessler's mouth tightened in the closest thing she allowed to a public smile. Darius punched both fists down at his sides like he had just won an argument with gravity. Audrey watched me, and the old part of me wanted to turn that look into permission to be happy. I didn't. I looked at Dr. Kessler first. That victory belonged to the life I had built, not the life I had escaped. Grant clapped 3 times, slow and polished. A beautiful sympathy result. The old fraud defense arrived on schedule. If the work won, pity had voted. I took the microphone before anger could make me theatrical. "The judging was blind," I said. "But since Grant wants the room to discuss sympathy, we can discuss preparation." Darius released the evidence packet to the showcase review screen and the public feed. He released current proof only, no rebirth, no clinic fraud, no first life wound that belonged in private, because I was finally learning that exposure was not the same as justice. The wrong profile capture appeared first. The charity smear briefly posted under the assistant's account before it moved to Grant's channel. Then the market footage showed the assistant sliding my loose work card into a folder. Then the youth preview reflection showed the identical cases. Then the original inner seal appeared beside Dr. Kessler's lab record. Grant stepped forward. Edit it. Event staff have the source footage, I said. The voice note played. Grant's own voice filled the room, flat and stripped of charm. Use the identical case. Keep the outer band clean. The first cough gives us the headline. No one applauded. Good. Some evidence should not get applause. It should make a room understand who had been willing to spend a teenager's safety, an assistant's career, and Harbor House's name for a cleaner camera angle. The assistant's statement followed. Brief, concrete, no performance. She confirmed the order, the prepared headline file, and the threat that her career would absorb the blame if the switch surfaced. Dr. Kessler verified my dated work and sealed samples. Event staff confirmed the reflected clip came from their own review footage. Grant's face did something I had wanted to see for longer than was spiritually flattering. It stopped being a camera angle. He recovered fast, because men like Grant always kept a backup mask in their pocket. So this is the story now, he said. The Sterling family's charity project becomes a genius, wins a sympathy vote, and throws edited scraps at the people who helped build him? The room turned toward me. That accusation still knew where to press because it used pieces of truth as teeth. I had lived at Sterling House. Edwin had helped me. Harbor House had raised me before that. Dr. Kessler had trained me. I was not self-made in the ridiculous way lonely men like to advertise after using every bridge behind them. But help was not authorship. Gratitude was not a deed transfer. I lifted the microphone again. I lived at Sterling House under a formal host placement, I said. I returned the key. I returned the household account card. I paid for my move with wages, a buyback refund, and aid from Briar Coast. Dr. Kessler supervised my training. Harbor House shaped my memory of what safety should feel like. None of that makes my work Grant's. None of it makes my future Sterling property. My voice stayed even until the last sentence. Then it shook. I let it. And if help only counts when it owns the person helped, then it was never help. The applause that followed was not as loud as the award applause. It was better. It sounded like breathing room. The showcase result became official minutes later. Open Door won the national field. The Harbor House fundraiser tied to the entry reopened, and by the time the closing reception began, it had already passed its earlier goal. The director sent me one message. No resident images. The center's terms stand. Proud of you. I stared at that message longer than I stared at the award. Grant did not wait to lose quietly. His scheduled exposé published before I left the venue, selective support records, cropped house photos, old images of me entering Sterling House after the rescue, stripped of the part where I had reached Audrey first. The piece called me manufactured, polished, funded, and promoted by Sterling generosity, then asked whether the public had mistaken a family project for independent genius. It was clever because it did not need to invent everything. It only needed to arrange the truth until it felt like a trap. By midnight, the origin story was everywhere Grant could push it. By morning, Harbor House had received hostile messages from people who thought they were defending honesty by harassing children who had nothing to do with me. Winning should have felt like the end of Grant's reach. Instead, it showed me exactly which story still needed to be corrected. Winning the showcase should have ended it. Instead, I woke up to a viral exposé claiming the Sterling family had manufactured my entire life. By the time Galloway pulled me back to Fairmont, the story had hardened into the kind of lie people loved because it used real pieces. Sterling House photos, support records. A younger version of me walking through a rich family's door after a rescue, the post described, like Edwin had descended from the clouds and assembled me by committee. I went to Harbor House before I went anywhere near Sterling House. The director met me in the front office with the tired calm of a woman who had spent years stopping adult problems from splashing onto children. She had already moved resident activities away from the front entrance. She had already told staff not to argue online. She had already done the practical things while I was still staring at my name becoming public property again. You do not have to answer all of it, she said. Then a resident came in holding a flyer that had been taped to the door. The director took it before I could read every word, but I saw enough. Charity fraud, Sterling puppet, fake genius, Harbor House scam. The resident looked confused, not wounded yet, and that somehow made it worse. Children should not have to learn that adults can turn a home into comment section ammunition before breakfast. My anger got very quiet. I have to answer the part that reached your door, I said. The director shook her head. I want you protected too. I know. I looked at the folded flyer in her hand. But quiet protection leaves the lie standing where the kids can see it. That was when Edwin called. His solution was measured, immediate, and almost too clean. The Sterling Foundation could release a formal correction. He could provide protection around Harbor House entrances during Gala Week. He could state that Grant's piece had omitted material facts and let the grown adults take the heat away from the center. Part of me wanted to say yes to all of it and disappear for 3 days. That part had excellent survival instincts and terrible narrative timing. Accept the protection for Harbor House, I said. Keep resident names out of it, keep cameras away, and skip the donor parade. Agreed, Edwin said. But the correction cannot be quiet. He studied me through the screen. What are you asking for? The Sterling Futures Gala stage. The pause after that was heavy enough to bruise. Edwin understood the risk. So did I. A quiet statement could patch a leak. A live gala correction could burn the whole story down or hand Grant a cleaner frame. Ungrateful boy attacks benefactors at their own event. It was the kind of no-win room Grant loved building, which meant I wanted it where everyone could see the exits. You would be speaking in a room that expects gratitude, Edwin said. Good, I said. Then they can hear what gratitude is not. We spent the next day making the proof smaller, which was somehow harder than finding it. Darius arrived with graduation footage, the Briar Coast acceptance confirmation, the Juniper Cup work record, the travel receipt, and enough market video to make a patient person consider violence. Dr. Kessler brought dated originals, sealed samples, and the offended posture she reserved for anyone who thought a file folder could substitute for authorship. Darius spread everything across a table and said, "No audience has ever survived a spreadsheet with feelings?" Then we do not give them one, I said. The temptation was real. When people call you manufactured, you want to produce every receipt, every night shift, every private humiliation, every doorway you walked through without applause. You want to bury the accusation under proof until no one can see your shame moving underneath it. But too much proof becomes fog. So we chose only what answered ownership. By the end, the pile had one job: prove the route was mine, the work was dated, the host placement carried no debt, and Grant's current theft had receipts. Enough spine, not enough fog. Then Edwin placed the old rescue file on the table. No one touched it at first. That file was the hardest object in the room because it did two things at once. It corrected the lie that Edwin had simply found and built me. It also brushed against Audrey's teenage terror, and I refused to turn that into a stage prop just because Grant had worse manners than a broken smoke alarm. Audrey stood beside Edwin when he opened it. "The exposé calls my grandfather your rescuer," she said. Her voice was controlled but not cold. "That is false." I met her eyes. "The fact can be stated without details." "Yes," she swallowed once. "You reached me first. The placement came after. My memory of that time was fragmented, but the record is clear enough for that much." Edwin nodded. "I can confirm the host arrangement and the release. I can confirm you owed us no future." Audrey's hands folded around themselves. "And if I speak, I will speak only for myself. Your work, your feelings, and what you choose after are yours." That mattered more than a dramatic promise would have. After Edwin and Dr. Kessler left to settle the order of statements, Audrey stayed behind. She held out a small envelope. I knew what it was before she opened it, because some objects keep their shape inside your ribs. The Sterling House key lay in her palm. The same key I had placed on the entry table when I left. The one that had once felt like shelter, then obligation, then a hook under my skin. "I kept it," she said. "At first because I was angry, then because I told myself you might need it. Then because it let me pretend a door still existed if I became the person who deserved to offer it." That was dangerously honest. She set the key on the table between us, not close enough to touch my hand. "I am not calling Sterling House your home," she said. "I am not asking you to use it. I am not giving it back as proof that we are fixed. I am offering you the choice I should have understood the first time you returned it." I looked at the key for a long moment. My old self would have taken it because refusing a gift felt like violence. The angrier version from graduation would have shoved it away because accepting kindness felt like surrender. I was trying to become someone less dramatic and more difficult to purchase, so I left it on the table. "Thank you for making it a choice," I said. "My answer is no." Audrey nodded. The hurt crossed her face, and she let it cross without turning it into a bill. "I will keep it out of the speech," she said. "No," I said. "The key matters, just not as an invitation." Her eyes lifted to mine. That was the problem with Audrey. Even after everything, her full attention still felt like a room getting quiet around one candle. I noticed. I hated that the noticing had survived this much evidence, and because the final fight could not be mistaken for romantic closure, I said the dangerous thing before the stage could say it for me. "I still have feelings for you." Audrey went very still. My voice came out plain because there was no safe joke for that sentence. "I still remember building too much of myself around loving you. I still remember what it felt like to disappear inside that love. And right now, I am afraid that if I move too fast, I will call the old orbit a second chance." She pressed her lips together, then released them. "I want hope," she said. "My chest hurt. I know. But I do not have a claim on an answer tonight." The relief was sharp enough to feel like grief. "No," I said, "you do not." Audrey looked at the key, then back at me. "Then tonight I speak for what I did. Nothing else." For once, the space between us stayed intact because both of us chose not to cross it. Grant issued the invitation an hour before the gala program began. He did it publicly, of course. A private trap was just a trap. A public trap was content. His message praised the Sterling Foundation for uplifting promising young people and invited me to appear during the gala segment as one of its most inspiring success stories. He framed it beautifully, refuse, and I looked ungrateful. Accept, and I walked into the role he had written for me. Rescued boy, polished product, grateful proof. Darius read it and whispered, "I hate when villains understand event programming." "He's good at traps with printed programs," I said. Dr. Kessler looked at the proof stack. "You can still decline." I thought of the flyer at Harbor House, the director's hand folding it away, the resident's confused face, the key on the table. The graduation microphone, the old habit of letting other people introduce me because correcting them felt rude. "No," I said, "I accept." The Sterling Futures Gala glittered exactly the way expensive rooms glitter when they want generosity to look effortless. Edwin's people had positioned the clips, Darius had the current evidence, Dr. Kessler had the dated originals, Audrey had the key and her own words. The Harbor House director waited off stage where no resident would become a backdrop. Grant introduced me with a smile bright enough to need a permit. "Please welcome Noah Voss," he said, "a powerful example of what support, guidance, and the right family investment can create." The cage arrived polished into a compliment. I walked onto the stage while the room applauded the version of me Grant had built for them. Edwin stood near the side, jaw tight. Audrey did not move toward the microphone. Darius watched the screen. Dr. Kessler held the folder like she was prepared to beat misinformation with proper documentation and excellent posture. I took the microphone from Grant's hand. Then I looked at the audience he had arranged around that lie and opened my mouth to correct the first sentence. Grant invited me onto the Sterling Futures Gala stage as a charity success story, and I took the microphone to correct the first sentence. "I was helped," I said. "I was not created." The applause thinned into that expensive room silence where everyone remembered too late that they were holding glasses near people with cameras. Grant kept smiling beside me, but the smile had lost its soft lighting. Good. I had spent too many years letting other people choose the first sentence because correcting them felt ungrateful. That night, I chose the sentence myself. "I entered Sterling House after a documented rescue event involving Audrey," I said. "The only part that belongs on a public stage is this. I reached her first." Edwin's family became involved after that through a formal host placement coordinated with Harbor House. I will not turn Audrey's private trauma into a gala attraction. Grant leaned toward his microphone. "Convenient." "No," I said. "Convenient was cutting that part out of your post." The room made a sound that was almost a laugh and almost an injury. I did not chase it. Edwin stepped to the side microphone with the old rescue file closed in his hand. He did not wave it like a weapon. He held it like something heavy enough to deserve manners. "Noah's statement is correct," Edwin said. "The host placement came after that event. I offered educational and housing support. I did not adopt him. I did not employ him. I did not purchase service, romance, residence, college attendance, future work, or family loyalty." The written release I signed before he left said the same thing. Hearing it in his voice did something strange to my ribs. Not because I needed Edwin to free me. He already had. Not because the room had authority over my life. It did not. But because shame hates witnesses and that sentence dragged mine under clean light. I lifted my hand before Grant could slide another compliment around my throat. "I am grateful for help," I said. "I am not grateful for the lie that help makes a person transferable." Darius brought up the first clip. He did not run my whole life on the screen. No childhood montage, no sad music, no sentimental poverty reel designed to make donors feel holy for owning pockets. He showed the spine. The screen moved quickly. Ridgeview High School, my Briar Coast announcement, my own portal confirmation, the wage and travel trail, the buyback refund, Edwin's release letter, and Dr. Kessler's dated originals. I heard the room change as the sequence did its quiet work. Grant's rescue story turned back into choices, signatures, paychecks, and work that predated his need to own it. Grant said, "A touching selection." "From the man who built an exposé out of cropped house photos," I said. "I respect the commitment to irony. It is wearing formal wear tonight." Darius coughed once into his fist. Dr. Kessler did not smile, which meant she enjoyed it professionally. Grant's expression sharpened. You are still asking this room to believe hurt feelings are evidence. No, I said. I am asking them to stop confusing evidence with volume. Darius moved to the current packet. This time the screen showed the wrong profile capture, the market footage of Grant's production assistant moving my loose work card, the youth preview reflection with the switched case, and the original inner seal. Then the assistant's direct statement played. Her voice was small, careful, and more damaging than any speech I could have made because she did not decorate anything. She named the order, the prepared headline file, and the threat that she would take the blame if the switch surfaced. Then Grant's own voice note filled the room again. Use the identical case. The first cough gives us the headline. The silence after that was not expensive anymore. It was ugly. Grant stepped forward. You set a trap. With a harmless, incomplete notebook, I said. That only embarrasses someone who steals it. Dr. Kessler took the microphone when I yielded it. The decoy contained no unsafe formula and no finished work. Noah's real records remained dated, sealed, and supervised. Grant's entry copied a flaw that had no purpose except to expose theft. Grant looked toward the side of the stage, searching for a friendly face, a camera angle, a donor, a door. I recognized the motion because I had spent my whole first life looking for exits after someone else had already written the room. For once, he was the one standing inside the frame he built. Audrey, Grant said, turning his voice gentle enough to poison tea. Tell them the truth. You encouraged the partnership. You let the public believe there was a connection. Now that Noah has attention, everyone wants to pretend he was alone. Audrey did not move until I turned to her and held the microphone out. That mattered. She took it because I yielded it, not because Grant demanded it, and not because the room wanted a romantic scene gift wrapped for them. Her posture was perfect, her hands were not. I did not encourage a partnership with Grant, Audrey said. There was no engagement, no romance, no business agreement, no sponsor consent, and no permission to use my image or my family role. Grant tried to interrupt. Audrey did not raise her voice. She did not need to. I am not finished. The room obeyed her in a way it had never obeyed me at 18, and my old self would have hated that. I held the microphone stand and watched her use that power to give something back. At graduation, at Juniper Cup, and in every room where I treated support like a quiet claim, Noah already heard the private version from me, she said. Tonight I am saying it where the story was being sold. I mistook his care for access. I let my family's help become pressure. I let my regret reach for control before I learned to stop reaching. Her breath caught once. No joke belonged near that sound. That was my conduct, she said. Grant did not invent it. My grandfather did not owe me someone else's future. Mine. Regret gives me no claim on Noah, and I am asking for no answer from him tonight. Something in me loosened so quietly that nobody applauded over it. That apology did not erase the 6 years in my head. It did not make the Juniper Cup insult adorable character development. It did not turn the key back into a home. What it did was smaller and harder. It stopped billing me for her regret. Edwin took the microphone next, and the room remembered that money had consequences when it decided to have a spine. Effective tonight, he said, the Sterling Foundation is ending every active relationship with Grant Rourke's operation. The current evidence will be provided to the relevant university, event, sponsor, and review channels. Audrey's image and the Sterling Foundation will not be used to endorse him. Grant laughed once. It sounded rehearsed and homeless. This is panic, he said. You are all letting a charity case with a good stage trick dictate institutional policy. Event staff reached him before he could take another microphone. They did not tackle him. That would have been dramatic, and Grant loved drama when he could edit it. They simply removed the microphone from his hand, stepped between him and the stage line, and made his exit boring enough to be fatal. At last, his camera angle had no job left. The room did not explode. Real consequences rarely arrive with the correct soundtrack. Some guests whispered, some checked their phones. A few institutional representatives left their seats with faces that suggested urgent meetings and expensive apologies. Later, verified notices confirmed sponsor withdrawals and continuing reviews. Not a conviction, not cosmic justice with confetti. That was enough to make him look smaller than any insult I could have invented. But I refused to let Grant own the last image. I turned toward the side of the stage. Director? The Harbor House director stepped up from the wings, not from a resident backdrop, not beside a slideshow of children's faces, not under any lighting that confused privacy with inspiration. She took the microphone from me and gave me the look she used when I was about to overhelp and call it virtue. The center's terms are simple, she said. Resident names and images stay private. Attention does not buy tours. Gifts come without strings. The funds attached to Open Door go through Harbor House control, and the children do not become anyone's proof of kindness. I nodded. Those terms stand. Then I announced the part that mattered more to me than the room's approval. Open Door would continue as a benefit collection under Harbor House control. Money, participation, wording, images, and timing belonged to the center's rules. If that made the benefit less glamorous, then glamour could go find a hobby. I also announced my own small independent studio in Port Lark, separate from the Sterling Foundation, separate from Kessler's Sensory Lab, with one bounded collaboration with Dr. Kessler's lab and my name on the lease. Dr. Kessler took the microphone for exactly one sentence. "Collaboration is not ownership," she said. I almost laughed because of course that was the sentence she chose. Dr. Kessler could strip a philosophy down to its load-bearing beam and make it sound like she was correcting a mislabeled cabinet. The applause came then. I let myself hear it, but I did not lean my life against it. After the program, Audrey found me near the service hallway, where the gala music sounded expensive and useless through the wall. She stopped 3 steps away. Not 2, not close enough to make history do its stupid little victory lap. "What comes next?" she asked. My old self would have answered before the question finished. My angry self would have punished her for asking. The self I was trying to become took one breath and told the truth. "Nothing automatic," I said. "The key stays returned. We do not get a public label. Tonight going well does not turn into a reunion." Audrey gave one nod, even though it hurt. That much was visible. I did not need to invent the rest. "If 6 months from now your conduct still matches what you said tonight," I said, "I will consider one private coffee. It stays off camera, away from family pressure, without countdown texts and without treating patients like a performance." Audrey's eyes shone, but her voice stayed steady. 6 months, no bargaining, no answer owed. "And do it for you," I said, not as a way back to me. For a second, the history between us stood there holding every wrong version of home I had ever wanted. Then Audrey said, "I understand." I believed that she understood the sentence. I did not pretend that understanding was transformation. I had made that mistake before. Some lessons do not need an encore. The 8 months after the gala were quieter than the climax, which is rude of life but very on brand. Grant did not vanish into a dramatic pit. He lost the Sterling Foundation connection that had given his charity framing weight. Verified notices confirmed sponsor withdrawals and ongoing reviews tied to the showcase and university channels. The production assistant's statement stayed where it could protect her more than a public spectacle ever would. His name still surfaced sometimes, usually attached to denials that sounded less like confidence and more like a man trying to negotiate with. Harbor House stayed under the director's control. Her warm authority could humble a boardroom and a martyr in the same afternoon. Open Door kept selling under the center's terms. The updates I received were practical: supplies covered, program materials funded, privacy intact, resident faces protected, tragedy kept out of the sales pitch, children never turned into proof that adults had finally located decency. Darius sent me an invoice for gala production work with a line item labeled emotional damage, discounted. I paid it. Growth is beautiful, but so is compensating friends before they become unpaid infrastructure with better jokes. Dr. Kessler stayed exactly where she belonged: mentor, collaborator, critic, and occasional destroyer of inflated language. When she visited my studio, she inspected my shelves, my ventilation, my records, and my habit of apologizing to furniture when I bumped into it. "Small," she said, looking around. "That is the polite version of tiny." "No," she said. "Small enough to remain honest." I kept that one. Audrey sent no countdown messages, asked Edwin for no updates on me, and never appeared with a camera, a donation plaque, or the Sterling House key pretending to be symbolism's final boss. The Harbor House director told me Audrey came under center rules, did ordinary work, left when asked, and accepted privacy as part of the work. That did not guarantee forever. It mattered anyway. After the 6-month mark, I met Audrey for one coffee at a quiet table with no public label attached. She paid for her own drink. I paid for mine. We talked about Harbor House, school, work, and the kind of apology that keeps moving after the speech is over. She did not ask whether I loved her. I did not pretend I had stopped. The difference was that love no longer got to hold the steering wheel with both hands. When the coffee ended, Audrey said, "Thank you for coming." I said, "Thank you for not making it a test." Then I left first, and nobody collapsed into symbolism. Very mature. Deeply inconvenient for anyone hoping for a rain confession. 8 months after the gala, I unlocked my studio before sunrise. The room smelled like cotton, cedar, citrus, paper, and clean paint. Not destiny. Work. Chosen work. The kind that waited for my hands without demanding my whole life as rent. I thought about Sterling House and the key I had refused. I thought about Harbor House and the director's rules. I thought about Open Door, the scent that had won because it understood something I had learned the hard way. A door was not proof that I belonged to someone. It was proof that I could decide whether to enter. So, I stepped inside first. Then I opened it from the inside and chose who I would invite next.